Hey guys. This is part 19 of What If Naruto Was Sealed and Woke Up After 2,000 Years. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 48. What do you mean this happened? Location, horizon. Geras mused as he stared down the sight of the scope. He was lying down on his stomach on a crest looking down at their target. Naruto was beside him. He didn't have a scope to look through, nor did he use his helmet screen to zoom in. He wasn't even sure it could do that. He trusted the Turian to give him a clear image of what lay in wait for them. What's with them, Geras? He asked. He still looked through the scope, taking in everything he saw about the base. This might be more difficult than we originally thought. Nothing good ever came from that kind of a sentence. That bad? Yes, and it looks like that we could very well encounter worse. What exactly are we looking at? He needed the details. He could see the base from the crest easily enough, that was why they were on the crest in the first place. But he could only see the basic appearance of the place. Anything else was up to Geras. The Turian finally pulled his eye away from the scope. The base is walled. You can see that. And you can see the security towers along the walls. But there are also patrols on the walls and manning the towers. There are lights on the underside of the towers which will severely hinder our chances at a nighttime attack. Judging by the number of people to a patrol, the amount of patrols I'm seeing on the walls and in the towers, they've got a full barracks all the time here. Okay, so there's a lot of manpower and lights. Those could be easily handled. Naruto, would you think it's safe to say that they might be expecting you as well as us? He asked his friend and teammate. The shinobi didn't have to think it over long. Yeah, they might be. So they probably have some kind of defense against chakra users, and more specifically you. For all we know, we could be walking into a trap that gets all of us killed and you captured again. The Turian had felt that he let that happen once and he was personally responsible. He wouldn't let it happen again. So we're going to have to be thorough in our planning then. That is a big yes. The blonde turned his attention back to the base in front of him. It was becoming more and more like a fort in his eyes, getting more difficult to get through with each passing moment. Oh boy, he thought to himself. This is going to be tricky. I thought you lived for that kind of thing before, Isabu asked him. The key word there is before, Isabu. I've never had my chakra sealed away before I woke up in that cell. I go down there without a good plan, I'm liable to end up back in that cell. It was a thought that scared the hell out of him. It was a thought that he did not want to relive again. He focused on the base, trying to find a way in that could be easily seen. Even as he did it, he knew that he wasn't going to find it. Have you considered tunneling under? Saiken asked him. I don't know what kind of soil this planet has. While he did know enough from observations that the soil was hardy enough for core to grow, having seen said core from the nearby human colony, he didn't know if it would be a pain to dig through or not. He also didn't really know Doton Jutsu, so that wouldn't help him. Aerial drop? Suggested Komiai. Where would they land that they wouldn't get caught instantly? Koko asked. There could also be AA guns on the towers. Naruto tore his gaze away from the base and nudged Geras. Come on, he whispered. Let's get back to the others. This is probably going to require all of us to get through into the base. Geras nodded in agreement. Right. They had to be careful not to alert the base if they had any cameras focusing on the outlying land. That meant they couldn't just stand up and walk down the crest. They turned on their bellies and crawled back down. It was a slow pace, again because of being careful. By Naruto's reckoning, it took them a half hour to cover what was easily a 5-minute walk. Neither of them said a word as they crawled. It was only after they stood back up that Geras said, taking that base kinda makes me wish that I still had my team with me, not just Musashi and Eric. Naruto looked over at him. This was probably the first time he had ever really mentioned his team on Omega. He wanted to know more about them, but he also wanted to know how it all started. How'd you end up on Omega in the first place? He asked as they began to walk. They kept their eyes out, making sure that they wouldn't be caught unawares. He paused, collecting his thoughts to form into a coherent sense of things. After the first Normandy was destroyed and the clan scattered, please don't call it that. He frowned at the blonde. You want me to tell the story or not? Naruto looked at him pleadingly, but his eyes were steady. He sighed in defeat. Continue. Thanks. Anyway, after the clan scattered, I went to the Citadel to train and be a specter. But it didn't work out. There was too much politicking at the Citadel. Nobody was willing to take risks. There was also the fact that every time I tried to look into what happened the day the Normandy was attacked, I kept getting shut down. No matter how many times I tried, there was always someone telling me to let it go, and they weren't really subtle about it. Either it came as a threat, a price for a promotion, or an outright warning. Even Anderson told me to let it go. Anderson did? Yeah, he did. Although I think that he was being watched at the time and was forced to say those things. That could be plausible. But Naruto wasn't sure about it. What makes you say that? When I left his office, I noticed a shadow on the nearby roof fading away. A shadow fading away? He repeated, clearly in disbelief. That's what you're going with. You're a shinobi, the Turian reminded him. You guys are all about the shadows, right? He's got you there, Komi agreed. That could be debatable, Saiken argued. Some of the shinobi I've been forced to know over the years were quite flashy. Debate later, Naruto told the both of them. So, you tried finding out what happened while trying to be a specter, he said to Geras as a form of recapping. I'm guessing that it didn't go that well. Not in the slightest. I got sick of it all. Omega, on the other hand, was filled with criminals nobody could touch and no red tape to slow me down. It was a perfect fit, he declared with a satisfied smile. A small wind blew through the grass, making the blades dance just enough for them to see the motion. It caused a ripple effect that carried through the nearby hills. That explains you, but how in the name of Kami did you end up with a team of your own? Geras didn't look insulted at the remark. If anything, he just looked amused. Actually, it was much like how you got yours. Musashi came with me when I left the Citadel, that much is true. But once you prove that you get things done, people join up. Mercs who wanted to atone. Security consultants tired of playing by the rules. Those were just a few of them. I gave them hope. There was a mix of pride and sadness in his voice. The pride must have come from what he did to form the team, and the sadness had to have come from them dying. And what did you do on Omega? You've seen the place, Commander, many times. It was full of thugs kicking the helpless. That old anger at the injustice of it all began to bubble up from his stomach. It made him growl out, I formed my team to kick back. Before he went any further, he forced himself to calm down. It wouldn't do him any good if he got angry here. It could get the both of them killed. We weren't mercenaries. At least, nobody was paying us. We made money by taking down slavers, pirates, or gangs that went too far. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. It just came right out of him. The gangs on Omega must have loved you. Geras knew he was being sarcastic and laughed alongside him. Yeah, they loved me so much that 3 of them banded together to take us down in the end. My manager at CCC would have been impressed. Actually, now that he thought about it, his manager probably would have thrown a party at the chance of him biting it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shikaka said. But I think his counting's off. Yeah, he's right, Kurama agreed. The other 7 Biju, on the hand, were thinking of something completely different, something that surprised even them. Would you look at that? Isaba said in absolute wonder. I don't believe it, Yuki said. What are you talking about? Kurama asked them, annoyed at their reactions. You and Shikaku actually agreed on something. Both Fox and Tanuki shared a look at that remark. Then they turned their attention back to the rest of them. So? You two have been arguing practically since we've been created, Sun pointed out. We've agreed before. No, you haven't. It's more likely that you'll fight than agree on something, Matatabi said. As this all went on, Naruto had to repress the snicker bubbling up from his throat. You guys have fun with this line of conversation, he said to them all before turning his attention back to Geras. 3? I remember 4 gangs trying to kill you together. Yeah, but I'm discounting the Ronin since they started fighting for our side. The Turian looked over at him and fell silent. It was like he was waiting for an explanation for what exactly had happened that day. Even though they had turned at Naruto's command and it turned out that he was in command of the Ronin, Naruto still didn't have a clue how it happened. It was just one aspect of weirdness that surrounded his life now, and considering his life, that was definitely saying something. Since he didn't know how it had actually happened, he He wasn't inclined to explain it, not now at least. So instead, he just asked, "How exactly did you manage to get them all pissed off at you?" He gave the Turian approximate of a feral grin. It was simple. We'd hit their shipments, disrupt activities, get under their skin, make them angry. They'd come charging right into our well-prepared kill zone. Crossfire and snipers, clean and surgical. They never stood a chance. While Naruto was a bit impressed by the tactics of the kills, how they got there sounded all too familiar. They sounded like the criminals that rose up during the war and enjoyed themselves all too much. I will be honest with you, Gurus. Despite what you're telling me, you sound like just another one of the gangs on Omega. If he had to guess, that was why Arya never went after him herself. To her, it would have been business as usual. Gurus wasn't insulted by his words. Then I'm saying it wrong. We didn't shake anyone down. No civilian casualties. That was our rule. Every member of my team had lost someone to Omega's gangs. We weren't out to get rich. We were out to make those bastards think twice before murdering someone in the street. That sounded much better to his ears. But there was still something off about it. All of them? I thought Eric joined because he saw you guys in a fight. He did, his teammate acknowledged. Only he and Musashi were on my team, not because they lost someone. He remembered something that Musashi had told him. It was something that he had considered insignificant at the time, but now he was glad he knew what it was. Musashi had said that he wanted to come out of retirement from CCC when he joined up with you. He told me that too when we left the Citadel. Personally, I think the real reason he came to Omega was so he could keep an eye on Kojiro. Anyone would have found that to be odd if they didn't understand the circumstances. But Naruto knew them, and he was still curious about what was going on. He knew that Musashi and Kojiro had served together in the Alliance, but there was something more to it than that. If Musashi had come to Omega to silently watch Kojiro, that something more became more so. What's the deal with the two of them, anyway? He asked. Did they used to be best friends or something? Gurus looked over at him. How much do you know about those two? Not much. All I do know is that they served together, and they served alongside the Saint and the Demon. The Turian actually paused in mid-step, letting the blonde get ahead by a half-step. Wait, he said, jogging to catch up. Musashi told you they served alongside the Saint and the Demon? Yeah, he answered, looking back at him as he caught up. What, he tell you something different? Yeah, he did. He told me that they were the Saint and the Demon. Naruto was surprised. But on some level, he had a feeling that Musashi hadn't been telling the entire story. Now there was only one more question he had. Which one is which? The Turian shrugged. Don't know. You don't know? That's what I said. How could you not know? He told you that they were those two. Yeah, he told me when he was drunk. But he wasn't drunk enough to spill all of his secrets. He clammed up before I could get anything else out of him. That's when you pour more drink into him. I would have, if Eric hadn't gotten to it first. Having seen the Einherjar drink, Naruto could see how that would be a way to end the conversation. And if he always thought that if he wanted to know about someone's life, he should talk to them himself, not get second-hand information. What about the rest of your team? He asked, changing the topic. What they were like. Including Eric, Musashi, and me, there were 14 of us. Former military operatives. CCC agents, the usual, Gurus told him, a smile coming to his face, had a Solarian explosive expert. Pretty sure he spent time with the Solarian Special Task Group. My tech expert was a Batarian, believe it or not. Not the friendliest guy, but he could hack any system ever built. I'd be willing to bet that he could give Tali a run for her money. You'd lost that bet. I wouldn't be too sure about that. They would have continued that conversation. It could have even been considered a friendly argument, if they hadn't walked right back into the camp at that moment. The camp wasn't really much of a camp. It was just the team resting inside a small valley hidden away by a few hills and the grass. The first one to see them was Quan Misley, who promptly alerted everyone else. Well? Morden asked. It's going to be difficult, Gurus told him. He considered the words and then shrugged them away. Expected. Should not be cause of surprise. Naruto gave the Solarian a look of mild exasperation. Sometimes, Morden's way with words, or rather lack of way, could drive him to a wall and start hitting his head there. He hadn't yet, but that temptation was there. It could be problematic, Morden. Again, expected. Miranda joined in the conversation by saying that's not the only problem we're about to have. The blonde looked over at the brunette. What do you mean by that? Then he noticed that she and Jacob were standing guard over a cloaked person. While that might have been cause for concern, there was also the fact that cloaked person was not here when he and Gris had left to scope out the base. And who is that? It wasn't Miranda or Jacob who answered but their prisoner, speaking with a woman's voice. Nice to see you again, Naruto. Would you mind telling these guys to ease off? I'm here to help. She spoke like he was supposed to know who she was, but he didn't have a clue. Do I know you? He asked her. The cloak started shaking. Was she mad for him not recognizing her? He had had that experience a couple of times before. It had never been pretty for him. But he realized she was laughing when the chuckles started bubbling up from underneath the cloak. Geez, you weren't kidding when you said that this could happen. You don't remember a damn thing, do you? That set off the warning bells in his head. She knew what happened to him when he was apparently running from both the Akatsuki and the tribe. Who are you? She is Kasumi Goto, Miranda answered for her before she could answer herself. And she is the best thief in the galaxy. The name only got some reactions from the team, mostly just from Morden, Gris, and Zaid. Everyone else was a complete blank. Although Naruto had a feeling Jacob already knew this and chose to not let anything show on his face. The best? Repeated Ruko with a disregarding laugh. If she's the best, how come I've never heard of her? She said I was the best, said the now-named Kasumi, still chuckling, not the most famous. I do my best to make sure that stays that way. Why is she here? Gris asked. Jacob had a small look of irritation as he said, We don't know. The Turian looked at the human, his mandibles twitching in surprise. You what? He asked, wanting to be sure that he heard what he just heard right. We don't know why she's here. And I'm not going to tell you, Kasumi said with a voice of smug stubbornness. By the way, you do mind if I stand up? My knees are getting a bit strained. She didn't even bother to wait for the answer before standing up. Jacob looked over at Miranda with a look exasperated annoyance. Now I'm glad she refused. Refused what? Asked Ruko. Both Akatsuki members looked each other again. Their eyes had a silent conversation that lasted about 5 seconds before Miranda broke eye contact with him and said, The Akatsuki put a great deal of time and effort in finding Ms. Goto in order to hire her. You certainly were persistent, Kasumi remarked from where she stood. I would have thought you were an old flame coming after me with that persistence. Ruko was in the midst of taking a drink from a canteen when she heard that. The canteen froze and she stared at the thief with a suspicious look. Hire her for what? Naruto asked Miranda, keeping his attention on her. This team, she answered. But she snuck into one of my offices without anyone noticing her and left a message saying that she was already gainfully employed and she didn't have 2 employers at the same time. I did say thanks but no thanks, the thief added, looking a bit annoyed at her. You could mention that. No one replied to that. They were too busy focusing on the fact that the thief before them had tried to be hired and refused. If she had refused, it raised the question of what she was doing here now. But there was another question on Naruto's mind. Is she as good as she says? He asked Miranda and Jacob. Yes, Miranda answered. Jacob nodded his head. Very much so, he told the blonde. Ruko scoffed at that. Then why haven't I heard of her? She demanded. She had been in a lot of places where thieves were known to be in, but never once had she heard of Kasumi Goto. Same here, Zaid added. Both of them eyed the thief challengingly, daring her to answer their question. To that, she just laughed. Of course, you wouldn't have heard of me. I make sure it stays like that. If I didn't, it'd be a lot harder for me. Everyone who didn't know about her had no idea what she was talking about. It was Ruko who summed it up with a simple question. Huh? Yep, she's your sister, Gyuki said to Naruto. We already established that fact, Shikaku replied. But thank you for reminding us, Captain Obvious. I am the best thief in the business, Kasumi told Naruto's sister, enunciating her words clearly to get her point across, or to piss her off, either one, not the most famous. If I was the most famous, I'd have a bigger target on my back and I can do without that, thank you very much. Watch it, bitch, she growled at the thief. What? She asked with a confused tone that everyone knew was faked. Did I say anything that was wrong in any way? Ruko looked at her angrily. The impulse to kill to tear her head from body was beginning to bubble up inside of her, wanting to go to a boil. If it had been the old days, she would have heeded the call and splattered her brains across the grass without a second thought. But now, she didn't do that. She looked over at her brother with the question in her eyes. All he had to do was take one look at her before saying, "No, you can't kill her." "Not even if I make it bloodless?" she asked, hoping for a change of heart. All that got her was a bemused look from the entire team, even Quan Misley. Right, what was I thinking? With that said and done, Naruto looked back at Kasumi. "So you're the best." "That's right, I am. I let other idiots take the position of being the most famous," she answered without shame. "It makes it a hell of a lot easier to feed their ego and manipulate them into taking the jobs that'll get them caught. Like those pack of rich kid morons who tried breaking into the vault on Earth." "That was you?" Jacob asked her, clearly surprised. "Yep," she said, popping the pea. "You would not believe how easy it was to convince them to do the job. The last time I saw them, they were leaving the bar laughing and calling me a fool for passing up the job." She smiled a smug smile. "They're dead, I'm still kicking." "Who's the fool?" "Oh, I like her." "I like her, Komi," I said. "You would," Matatabi said with a roll of her eyes. "If she said she's already employed, what's she doing here?" Gurus asked, looking at both Jacob and Miranda for an answer rather than a thief. "You asked that question, Gurus," Miranda told him, an impatient tone edging onto her voice. "We already told you that we don't know." Some could have taken that as a chastisement, but he wasn't one of those people. All he did was fold his arms and say it bore repeating. "It doesn't matter anything much to you, big boy," Kasumi told him. "I'm not here for you." He eyed her carefully. "Did we interrupt you while you were going on a mission or something?" Grunt snorted at that. "If we did, she must be pretty fucking stupid to decloak in the middle of the camp." The Turian looked over at where the Krogan was squatting atop a semi-large rock, made small just by him sitting on it. "What?" "You heard me." A part of him was reminded of his arguments with Rex at that remark. He was ready to fire back with an acid remark of his own, when he saw Naruto looking at him out of the corner of his eye. Then he remembered what else came with his verbal matches with Rex, threats of finding a priest by the blonde to bind the two of them in marriage. It looked like Naruto remembered that too and wouldn't be above using it here. So he did the wise thing and kept his mouth shut. It wouldn't get the conversation anywhere, but it would keep him out of trouble. Fortunately, Grunt took care of the conversation. "What? You're not going to say anything back?" "Pathetic," he declared with a spit. "Watch it, Grunt," his teacher told him. "Gurus knows when to retreat, something you still have a hard grasping if our lessons have been any indication." "Why should I run from a fight?" he asked back. The blonde raised his eyebrow. "Do I have to remind you of your first lesson?" The Krogan's chest flashed with a phantom pain at the question. He shook his head and said, "No, I don't." "Good." He lowered the eyebrow and looked at Zaid. "Seriously, she just decloaked in the middle of camp?" The merc shrugged his shoulder. "Wouldn't know it myself," he replied. "I was off taking a piss when I heard your sister let out a slew of curses." He looked over at Ruko. "Remind me to get some of those insults down later." They seemed creative. "Anyway," Jacob said forcefully, trying to get the conversation back on track, "yes, she did appear in the middle of camp and wanted to know where you were, Commander." "She wanted to see me?" Naruto asked himself. "Are you really surprised by this?" Kurama asked him. To the fox, he really shouldn't be. "No, I'm not," he admitted after a moment. It seemed like everyone who came close to his team nowadays wanted to join, needed rescuing, or was just trying to kill him. "So I'm here," he said to Kasumi. "What do you want?" "Can't tell you," she replied instantly. He stared at her incredulously. She was the one who wanted to know where he was, but when he showed himself, she wouldn't tell him what she wanted. That was either confusing or just annoying. He didn't know which one to go with. "Why can't you tell me?" he asked her. "Because I can't tell you." "And here we go again," Sun declared. It seemed like there was a lot of people out there who liked to confuse things by repeating things over and over again without getting anywhere. If the gorilla had an option, he would strangle each and every one of those little shits. If they were all dead, things would be a lot easier in the universe. But the thief wasn't done. "To be more specific, I can't tell you in front of all these people." She looked around at the entire team before turning her attention back to the blonde shinobi, her eyes conveying the meaning her words also held. She wanted to talk alone. The silent request was odd nonetheless. "Why would I permit that?" Naruto asked. "If you have something to say, just tell it now. Sorry, can't do that. My employer was very detailed about this bit. I can only tell you why I'm looking for you and no one else. Miranda was interested at the mention of the employer. Who is your employer? She asked Kasumi. She just gave the brunette a look. I wouldn't be the best thief if I spilled who I was working for, would I? Honestly, I would have thought that you had figured that out. Ruko let out an involuntary snigger at that. Miranda flashed an eye at the blonde but said nothing. So the only way you're going to tell me anything is if I have a talk with you alone, is that it? Naruto asked her. That's it. He didn't even pause to consider it. All right. The entire team looked at him with the same expression on their faces, surprise with a tone of "Are you kidding me?" along with a surprising dose of resignation. Sir, are you sure about this? Jacob asked him. How else are we going to get the information out of her? Could torture her? Morden offered. He wasn't being malicious when suggesting the tactic, giving it in his usual methodical tone. She's not the kind of person who'll crack under torture, Jacob told the Solarian. No, personally? He asked. No. I can just tell. Kasumi grinned at him. You would be right. So the only real way to find out why she's here is for me to talk to her alone, Naruto said. It wasn't a good idea, he knew that. But it was the only way they were going to find out. She grinned at him and started doing a little shuffle underneath the cloak. Glad you're seeing it my way. Shall we get a move on then? There was tinny thumping sound that came behind her back. He looked at her and then at the Akatsuki members standing beside her. Who had the idea of handcuffing her? Either of them replied. They were too busy looking at anything that wasn't the thief standing between them. She just smiled and sauntered off. Are you coming or what? She asked Naruto without even looking back at him. No one stopped her as she left the camp. No one stopped him as he followed out. They didn't walk that far from the camp, but far enough they wouldn't be easily heard. You think the others are going to listen in? The shinobi asked his tenants as he walked through the grass again. They're probably going to try, Kurama replied. But I'd be willing to bet that she's got some kind of muffling device on her that'll make listening in much harder. Still, this whole thing is weird, Koko remarked. Can we even trust her? He's following her out here, isn't he? Isabu pointed out. Sun had a counter to that. That's interest, not trust. Kasumi came to a sudden stop and turned around to face him. All right, here we are, she declared. This'll be far enough. The blonde came to a stop and regarded her with a suspicious look. How do I know that I can trust you? She said, in my line of work, trust is overrated. In my line of work, trust is what keeps you alive. Now, why should I trust you? I don't even know who you are. She placed a hand on her chin, acting like she was thinking about it. He knew it was acting because she was doing a completely obvious job of it. You have a point there. She took the arm down and swung it around her back. He had a kunai out and pointed right at her left eye. No sudden moves. She wasn't fazed by the blade's tip 3 inches away from her eyeball. Relax, Commander, I have something that'll prove you can trust me. It's attached to my back. I'll pull it out slowly now, okay? This is risky, Isabu cautioned him. I know, he replied. But he had to know if he could trust her. Do it slowly. She nodded her head, all traces of humor leaving her. Her arm came back into view, inch by inch. When she had it out fully, she held it in a gentle grip and offered it to him. Here, my proof. No way, Sun said in absolute surprise. That can't be it, Komi protested. I'm seeing it. Aren't you? Shikaka asked him. But it was Kurama who summed it up perfectly with holy fucking shit. Naruto silently agreed with the sentiment as he stared down at the sheathed blade. The sheath itself was made of black iron but did not show a speck of rust. There were, however, nicks and scratches along the hilt and sheath, especially along one that from the former to the latter. He knew that one was there because he had been the one who made it. Finally, he tore his gaze off and looked at Kasumi. Why am I looking at Sasuke's Chikudo? He asked, his voice deepening into a snarl. She wasn't fazed by his snarl. She looked him in the eyes calmly, just as she did when the kunai appeared before her eye. You helped me steal it. I did what? You helped me steal it, she said in the same tone of voice. From where, the Uchiha clan? He demanded, his anger growing at a fast pace. She shook her head. No, but you first thought it should be given back to them. I had to convince you that if you did it, you'd be revealed. That was the last thing you wanted then. The words cooled the growing anger and replaced it with confusion. He could understand wanting to return the sword to the Uchiha clan. It would have been the right thing to do. But he also had to stay hidden. He also helped her steal it. What the fuck was I doing during that time? He asked himself, which he quickly added, that wasn't an invite for you guys to reply. Well, if you're going to spoil our fun, Sun said back, actually sounding huffy about it. Stay on point, Naruto, Gyuki cautioned him. He knew that. Start from the beginning, he ordered the thief, taking the Chikuto from her. Could you be a little more specific, please? He mentally counted down from 10, trying to keep his anger in check. He didn't know if she could be any more annoying than she already was. But he didn't want to find out, and he didn't want to kill her. How did I meet you and why did I end up helping you steal this? She smiled and said, Oh, that I can answer. Then do it already. It's very simple. You had wanted my help on some stuff and I was curious about what it was you needed. But I've never been one to go in full steam, so I asked for your help first. I needed to steal something from a man named Donovan Hawk and I knew I couldn't do it alone. I recruited you to help me and you agreed. He looked back down at the sword and then at her, the anger coming back. He had this? She nodded. It was lost about a century after Sasuke Uchiha's death, during an internal conflict of the elemental nations. At least Hawk had the decency to keep it in August's company. He had placed it alongside the statues of the first 5 Kazekages, and the headband of Jiraiya himself. The blonde froze at that last comment. Jiraiya's headband was there? He asked, his voice barely coming out in a whisper. That it was. You almost punched out a wall when you saw it there, and shooting out the hologram of Hawk when he appeared. She was talking, he knew that. But the words didn't matter. Where is that headband now? Don't know. He actually snarled at that. Don't lie to me. The kunai came closer to her eye. A drop of sweat fell down the side of her face. I'm not lying. You're the one who grabbed it when we busted out of there. I've got no freaking clue where it is or what you did with it. She gave no indicator that she was lying, none that he saw anyway. But he found his anger being drowned by a wave of cold astonishment and fear. If he had Jiraiya's handband last, where was it? What the hell did he do with it? Did he lose it? Or worse, did the tribe have it? All of this information was enough to give him a headache, and it was. This doesn't mean I still trust you, he told her. Hey, you're the one who gave me the sword. You said that it should be enough to be convinced me if you forgot what happened to you. I'll admit, I thought it was a little weird to say when you had kept close to you in that shuttle after we got off planet. He looked back down at the Chikuto. Why did he give it to her in the first place? He knew what this meant. It should have gone right back to the Uchiha clan. It would have been a matter of such extreme importance, but he gave it to a thief? That didn't sound like himself. As he looked at the hilt, he noticed something very odd. The tip was a little thicker than he remembered. Does anyone else see this? I don't know, I've never seen the thing before, Sun reminded him. I have, Kurama said. And I see it too, Naruto. That tip is definitely thicker than the last time. He was glad to know he wasn't crazy about what he was looking at. But why was the hilt thicker? If there had been modifications made to it, he would have thought it had been done the sword itself, and that didn't look any different to his eyes. There was only one thing he could do. He lowered the kunai and sheathed it. With his hand free, he reached out and touched the hilt. To his surprise, he felt it move. It wasn't permanently attached. He took a firm grasp of the tip with his fingers and pulled gently. It came off without any resistance. Once it was away from the Chikuto, he could take a better look at it and saw what it was. It might have been colored differently, probably spray painted, but it was definitely an OSD. Did you know about this? He asked the thief, holding it out for her to see. She only took one look at before shaking her head. No. I guess it's one of yours. He regarded her with a suspicious look. How do you know that? You kept recording yourself whenever we found something. I had asked you what that was all about, but you didn't tell me anything. And no, I don't know where the others are, she said before he could ask the question. Every time you made one, it seemed like it disappeared within 5 seconds. Gah, is this how others found me to be annoying? He couldn't help but ask when he heard that. The fox gave his Jinchuriki a level stare. Do you really want me to answer that question? No. He unfolded the OSD into his hand, protecting it from everything and anything. Here, hold this, he told Kasumi, handing the Chikuto back to her. She took it back carefully and held it as such. You can go ahead and watch the thing, she said. I'll wait here. I don't mind. He was sure that she wasn't, but that didn't mean he wanted her to hear what was on the thing. He didn't know her well enough for that. He activated his helmet. He fiddled with his Omni tool until he figured out how to project the audio and visual of the OSD onto the helmet itself. Once he got it, he inserted the OSD and let the video play. Like before, the video had himself in it. But he was dressed differently this time around. He was actually dressed, quite classy, like he was going to a formal party. The suit was tailored to a man of his size, but not him specifically, and it looked like the party had gotten a little more than rough, even more so with the Chikuto leaning against his shoulder. The suit itself was black, but the edges were done in a dark green. I don't want to hear it, the QB told him. He didn't know what the fox was talking about and showed it. Huh. Don't pretend you don't know. I don't. Any chance you can help me out here? The fox growled a little and rolled his eyes. I keep forgetting that I was stuck inside an idiot. It was an old insult, and Naruto hardly paid attention to it now. Furball, just explain what the hell you were talking about already. I don't want to hear you complaining about how you're not wearing any orange. Seriously? That's what you thought I was going to say. Cut me some slack here, Fox. This is a situation that has to be taken seriously. This is not the time to worry about whether or not I was wearing orange. Kurama paused before he answered, staring at the blonde from within his mind in shock. I'm not the only who heard that, right? No, I heard it too, Gyuki said. This is a first, right? It might be. Has he said anything like it before now? Shikaka asked. Both the Kyubi and the Hachibi threw him a look of exasperation. We're talking about Naruto Uzumaki here, Kurama told him. For him to deny himself the chance to wear the color orange would be like Madara Uchiha suddenly renouncing war and violence, going underground and only to be found much later as a pacifist monk. It's not going to happen. Alright, sorry I asked. You'll have to forgive me for not knowing him as long as you two, the Tanuki shot back. He has you there, son remarked. Shut up, the fox snapped. Hey there, spoke the video Naruto, silencing everyone who was listening in. If you're watching this, then that means you've already run into Kasumi Gado. You're going to have doubts about her story. It's why I'm leaving this, he shifted the Chikuto slightly for emphasis, with her. I'm guessing that she's already told you about how she got a hold of it. What she has said about the mission is true, all of it. You went with Kasumi to Hawk's place in order to recover a gray box from Kasumi's dead lover. You did find the Kazekage statues and Erosenin's headband inside the vault. Hawk is dead now, which means anything in his vault could be up for grabs. It would be, if I hadn't made call to our contact and told him about it all. You'll probably get called out on it later for breaking protocol, but I'm sure they'll let this one slide. Needless to say, what was found will be kept safe. He shifted some more, letting the weapon fall down to the ground. It looked like he was uncomfortable, probably a bullet that had hit him or something like that. If you still have doubts about Kasumi, ask her to take her hood down and show you her face. Once you figure that out, ask about her lineage. You'll give the same answer I did, and you'll know she'll have your back. Take care once you've done all that. You finally seeing this video means that things are coming to a head. She doesn't know it as I'm making this, but Kasumi will once you've seen it. Knowing her, she'll probably spill the beans without much prompting. The screen went dark and then faded away, leaving to look down at his arm and the grass at his feet. He lowered his arm and deactivated the helmet, turning back to look at Kasumi. She hadn't moved an inch since he had turned his back, so he took that as a good thing. Lower your hood, he ordered her. My, so forward, she remarked lightly, but still did it anyways. As the hood fell down, her dark sprang up into the air. It was a small movement that meant it was just getting free of the constraint that had been holding it down. Her lower lip only had a dapple of purple makeup on it, and both were quickening up into a smirk. The smirk managed to work across her entire face, transforming it into an appearance that would make men stop and stare as she walked past. Her eyes were brown and watched him intently. They had somehow managed to be a part of the smirk but still watch him with intelligence. At first, he didn't see what his video self had been talking about. All he saw was a new face. But then the details starting to come to him, and each one hit him hard. The hair was fine and could possibly even be silky, but if it was tied up into a bob or even a ponytail, it would take on a shape. The cheekbones were there sharp as ever, same as those lips. The ability to pull off that kind of a smirk that used the whole face to become enticing belonged to only one person he knew, but those eyes belonged to someone else. He saw all of those details and they were a sledgehammer banging away at him. Thoughts? He asked. For once, Kurama wasn't annoyed, exasperated, or just frustrated with the situation. I see it too, Gaki. You should probably just ask the question. What's your lineage? He asked Kasumi. She wasn't curious by the question or confused by it. She just looked more amused by it. Where have I heard that question before? From me, probably, he thought to himself. Just answer the question, please. I'm sure you already can tell, but since you asked? I can trace my lineage back all the way back to Fourth Shinobi World War. You knew my ancestors, of course. I think you knew them quite well. Of course, he did, there was no thinking about it. You're descended from Ino and Shikamaru. Got it in one, she said with a nod. But it's more on the Nara side than the Yamanaka. You can tell by my hair and eyes. She reached up and twisted a lock around, just for emphasis. He just stared at her in a whole new way. A Nara's intelligence and a Yamanaka's energy, he said in wonder. How are you not ruling the galaxy right now? She looked at him with amused surprise before throwing her head back in a laugh. It was a loud belly laugh that was infectious, for he started chuckling himself. When she was finally able to stop laughing, she said, You said the exact same thing when you figured it out the first time. Honestly, you lose your memory, and you still react in the same way. It was enough for him. If he knew where she came from and that they had worked together before he lost his memories, she knew enough to make him trust her. All right, come on, he told her. Let's head back to the camp. Lead the way, boss man. They both turned and started walking back the way they had come. So, tell me, she said not a minute after the walk had started, how's the new team been doing? He snapped his head back at her. What do you mean? She regarded him for a moment. Right, sorry. Forgot that you forgot about that, she remarked. So, you want me to forget I said anything? He shook his head. No. You sure? She asked. You're the one who opened your mouth. Tell the rest of it. Okay. You're the one who decided who was going to be on that team waiting around the fire. She made it sound so simple and easy. But he couldn't believe it. That was the Akatsuki. They're the ones who found the people and told me to go get them. She just smirked. That's what they think. You're the one who had me put the information into their hands. You're also the one who had me give you the breadcrumbs that led you to here. I what? He replied. She walked past him, pulling up the hood over her head. I'm here to help you break into that place, Naruto, because that is the end part of what you hired me to do. The tribe thinks it is impenetrable. It's not. It will be difficult to get in. I should know because I've spent the last month and a half figuring out how to do it. But you can get in. When the two of them reached the camp again, Naruto told the team that Kasumi had been hired to help them break into the base. That was all he told them. Both Miranda and Jacob looked like they wanted more, but he didn't say anything else about it, reminding them that they were here to find Urzia. Jacob stopped after acknowledging that, but Miranda didn't. Kasumi explained the plan in a simple manner. She had gone from being joking and smirking to being quite serious. If there was anyone who had an objection to what she was saying, she didn't care to hear it. She gave detailed instructions to the groups she had divided the team into. Once she was done, she told them to get ready since they would be heading out when it was dark. That was how Naruto found himself crawling with his arms through a tunnel, his helmeted gaze barely an inch away from Kasumi's feet and Zaid growling curses behind him. As it turned out, they could tunnel underneath the base and the soil was just the right kind to make it easy. This has got to be one of the shittiest jobs I've ever done, the merc muttered loud enough for them to hear. I can think of a few things worse, the blonde couldn't help but think. The fall of Kumo came to mind first. He had to crawl through the trench system after Obito collapsed it, turning it into a dark claustrophobic labyrinth. He had spent 8 hours crawling, trying to find other people alive in there and a way out, all the while making sure he didn't lose his light or his sense of direction. And that was just one thing. Here, he knew where he was going, he knew he wasn't alone, and he knew that he had a sustainable light. Besides, the dirt here was packed and dry. Back then, it had been muddily wet from the rain, so when he finally crawled out, he must have looked like a monster. Kasumi didn't stop moving, but she did speak. Funny thing you should mention shittiest. considering where we're going to end up and all. She had ditched the cloak she wore, seemingly glad to get rid of it, but she kept the hood up around her head. What the hell do you mean by that? Zaid demanded. You'll see. Woman, give me a straight answer. Somehow, I don't think that kind of command is going to work, Isabu commented. Naruto didn't reply to the biju. He was too busy thinking about what the thief had said. Then he had a very bad feeling about what was coming up. Kasumi, are you taking us to the bathroom? He asked. Yes, she answered shortly. Please not through the toilet, please not through the toilet, please not through the toilet, Gyuki started to chant, nodding his head back and forth as he went. Why are you chanting that? Naruto asked. He stopped his nodding long enough to say, let's just say it was a bad experience with B, his second trip out of Kumo, and a severe case of diarrhea. That would have made him pause, resting his armored elbows in the dirt. He packed the robe away, figuring now wasn't the time for shock and awe methods, if it was any other time. But he kept crawling through the dirt in the tunnel, making sure not to raise his head high enough to the ceiling. And how does that involve me crawling through a tunnel that might lead us to the bathroom? He was still having doubts that the bathroom was where they were actually going. But the Hachibi went back to his chanting. Please not through the toilet, please not through the toilet, please not through the toilet. The blonde mentally rolled his eyes. Fox? Don't look at me, Gaki. I have no idea what he's talking about, Kurama told him. I was with you and your mother before that, remember? Actually, I was wondering if you could get him to stop that. He'll get out of it, eventually. He didn't bother to keep up the argument. He kept following Kasumi's feet as she crawled forward. Remember to press upwards against the ceiling, she told him. Zaid, press your arms out to get the sides. Why? They both asked at the same time. We do want a way out of here, don't we? There's no need to be fucking sarcastic about it, Zaid said, sounding very annoyed. She didn't look back at him, only saying, then just do it. We're going to be in here for a while, so we want to make sure that the tunnel doesn't fall on top of our heads. That's just fucking great. You claustrophobic, Zaid? Asked Naruto. That's none of your fucking business. I'll take that as a yes, Sun said. They fell silent as the crawling went on. Time seemed to become non-existent in that confined tunnel that was only lit by the lights of their helmets. All that mattered was putting one arm in front of the other, pulling themselves to that arm, and repeating the process. Again and again the three of them did that motion, going deeper into the tunnels. Naruto wasn't sure if they ever turned left or right since all he could see was Kasumi's feet, although he did know that they didn't go up or down. It could have been 20 minutes or 3 hours, but he almost ran into Kasumi's feet. What's up? He asked, coming to a stop. From behind him, he heard Zaid stop and cursed a muffled oath. We're here, she announced. All right, now what? He asked. Now we wait. For how long? Asked Zaid from where he laid at Naruto's feet. For however long it takes. Great, that's just fucking great, he grumbled. Yeah, he's definitely claustrophobic, Gyuki decided. Is it any of your business? Naruto asked him, and the other ate tenants in his head. No, just pointing out a fact. Shut up then, I don't need to know if the man's claustrophobic or not. You're no fun, Shikaka said accusingly. Not right now, no. He had to settle in and get as comfortable as possible. Just as soon as it had come back, time vanished once more. He lay there, in the tunnel, and began to doze. Since being in the war and going through long waits, he had fallen asleep more than once, only to jerk back awake at the realization that he had fallen asleep. The veterans of previous wars had taken pity on him and taught him how to control that dozing, to use it to fall into a place where he was not quite awake and not quite asleep. He heard it called the zone, and he found it to be a great place to relax oneself. Someone had even said that being in the zone was even better when you shared it with someone else. It could have been taken many different ways, but Naruto knew what he meant by it because his thoughts had gone straight to Sakura and Hinata. The zone was also a great place to think about things that were going on with his life. Since it would probably take some time for things above ground to get going, he could have time to ponder what the hell he had been doing after the Normandy had been destroyed. He first thought that it only happened for a couple of weeks, but with the things he had been listening to and seeing, he was starting to feel that it was more like months. Just what the fuck am I doing? He asked. Are you looking for input? Kurama asked, casually serious about his question. Sure. Kami knew he was confused as all fuck. Maybe the fox could be able to bring in a new perspective he hadn't thought of before. Do you mind if everyone joins in? He didn't see anything wrong with the idea. The more the merrier, right? He asked. Plus, more input might give him a better idea of what he was doing behind his own back, which was something he was sure Jiraiya and Shikamaru would be interested in. Okay, so what are we talking about again? Isabu asked, wanting to know. What I've been doing since the first Normandy went kaboom. Oh, that old horse? The Senpai asked. I wouldn't call it an old horse, Saiken argued. It's only 2 years old. It's more like a mature horse. Why are we even talking about horses in this day and age? Sun asked. We could ask the expert, Shikaku suggested, swinging his head over to look at Koko. Very funny, Shikaku, the Gobi said disapprovingly. Keep it up and I'll trample you with my hooves. Guys, stay on point here, Naruto told them. We're talking about what I've done during those 2 years, not horses. Alright, Shikaku agreed with a shrug. So, how do you want to go about it? He could have marveled at the Tanuki's ability to be serious, if that had been the first time he had seen it. I just want to figure out what I've been doing during that time. You've been doing that ever since you got that first message, Komiai pointed out to him. I don't think that you've gotten anywhere. That's why I'm talking to you guys. We haven't gotten anywhere with it either. That's the problem. Whoever had your mind wiped certainly knew what it was they were doing, Matatabi acknowledged. They were so thorough that they managed to get even us. Either that or you told the wiper to make sure that we were gotten too, Gyuki added. There was a slight frown on the Hachibi's face as he thought about that idea and all it could have and might have applied. Why would he or she or whoever it was do that? Asked Sun. Kurama answered, maybe it's because the Gaki wanted it to be so thorough that it wouldn't be accidentally revealed to him ahead of time. That does make sense, their Jinchuriki conceded. The way this thing has been going on, I wouldn't have wanted any of you to prematurely spill the beans. Why are you looking at us? Isabu asked, sounding rather insulted that he would even consider such an idea. That would be because some of us cannot hold a secret to save our own asses, Kurama retorted, staring the turtle directly in the eye before turning to stare to a few others. And when the blonde knows something that he shouldn't, he desperately wants to talk to someone else about it. Hang on, Naruto instantly protested. I wasn't that bad. Oh, so I'm remembering how you found out Orochimaru had a family, and you wanting to tell someone differently? He knew that there was no good answer to that, not since most of the people who later found out thought it had been rather funny in hindsight. It had even made Sasuke laugh, which should have said something. Let's stay on topic. Oh no, you're not getting away that easily. Focus, furball, please. We're trying to figure out what exactly I've been doing that required such an extensive memory wipe. You're the one trying to figure that out. Kurama, focus, Matatabi chastised the fox. You're the one who invited us into this talk. Maybe you're playing some kind of long-term game, Sun suggested to Naruto. That suggestion initially sounded ridiculous, but with the way things had been going, it also could have been very, very plausible. That might explain the memory wipe. If I'm playing a long game, I wouldn't want to give myself away too soon. The question is, why would you have to erase your own memories? Koko asked the obvious question. Actually, that's not the question I'm really concerned with, he replied to the Gobi. What question are you focusing on then? Who am I going up against that requires such a memory loss? Wait, I think that question was already answered, Gyuki told him. That message Miranda found talked about how both the tribe and the Akatsuki were coming after you. So why am I working for one against the other now? Hell if I know. Helpful, very helpful, he replied with a bite of sarcasm. That's the short and sweet of it. You know it. I know it. He did know it, but it wasn't what he was looking for. You got anything else for me besides that? Anyone got anything? All I can think of is that you're being pulled around like a puppet, Matatabi told him. I guess the question is who's holding the strings. I'd say the Akatsuki is, Sun declared. I do too, Koko agreed. Who else could it be? Komiai asked. I don't know. I've got an idea, Kurama said. Let's hear it. At this point, he would be glad for it. You, the fox told him. Huh? Me? Yeah, you, he repeated himself. The blonde might have protested the idea, if he didn't find it plausible. It could very well be that he was being yanked around by past self. But that just brought up more questions for him, many of which he could barely even answer. In the end, he decided to come with a declaration. I'm sick and tired of this crap. I hear that, his oldest tenant agreed. Hey, I've got a question, Shikaku spoke out. I'm sure you do, the QB thought to himself. He got a look from Gyuki that said not to do anything. He just snorted and settled in for a nap since they were going to be there for a little while. What was that? Shikaku demanded, swinging his head around to look at the fox. Nothing, you're paranoid. What's your question, Shikaku? Naruto asked, choosing to stop the argument before it even started. When did we slip into one of your dreams? Wait, what? He brought his attention out of the zone, and he saw that he wasn't in the tunnel anymore. He was crouching on a wooden beam, looking down at a room. He could only tell that the shape of the room was long and triangular, which seemed a little weird to him. Any other details were lost in the sense of vague fuzziness that surrounded the edge of his vision. The only details he could see was a long bed that sat in the middle of the room and Sakura sleeping in it. How did this happen? Sun asked. I don't know, the tanuki said with a shrug of his shoulders. Koko was about to join in the conversation when he noticed that Naruto had fallen into a somber silence. Are you okay, Naruto? She looks like she's been through hell, he thought, looking at his teammate. Even though she was sleeping, she looked tired. Well, she is middle-aged, Komiai offered. He could see that in her iron-gray hair and lined face. But that wasn't all. It was the way she unconsciously held herself. Her body language was tense, ready to snap at anyone that dared to irritate her. But there was also sadness too. She was sad for her dead daughter, and probably for her family. She must miss them by now. Why hadn't she gone back already? He could see that whatever it was that was troubling her was still there. He heard the sound of a door opening gently, and it was enough for her to wake up. She sat up and looked over at the door. Good morning, she said shortly. He didn't see who it was that she was talking to until the person came into his clear view. The man, for it was a man, he could tell that by the build of him, wore robes of red that managed to convey a sense of not power, but calmness. His head was shaved, completely free of hair. He held his hands to the opposite shoulder in a relaxed form. If Naruto had to guess, he looked like a monk. Good morning, good lady, he said with a semi-thick accent. She swung her legs out of the bed but did not stand up. You're still practicing. Your accent could be intelligible now. It had been thicker before? The blonde in the rafter thought. He could barely understand what the man was saying now, and it had been worse before? Your thanks is much appreciated. I am honored to have learned from you, the monk told Sakura. Do you wish to attend the morning meal? Is anyone feeling like he's being overly formal? Saiken wondered aloud. Yeah, I'm getting that too, Isabu agreed. He was probably just learning the language, Komiai figured. So how long has Sakura been there? Naruto asked. Better question, where is she? Matatabi suggested. That was indeed a good question. It had all of them wondering. Sakura didn't answer the monk. Instead, she stood up from the bed. I've thought about the abbot has suggested, Wang. Oh? The now named Wang asked, sounding very curious about what she had to say. I will attempt to climb the mountain, but I don't think that I will find anything up there. The mountain? Naruto thought with a start. She's at the mountain? Looks like it, Kurama said. He was having trouble believing it. He had read that the mountain had been discovered by Midgardians and frontiersmen, but she seemed to be here before any of them. What the hell had the history books left out? As he wondered this, the monk smiled happily. That is good to hear. I will go and tell the abbot of your choice, he told her, turning to leave the room. As he closed the door behind him, Sakura was left alone in the room. Talk to her, Komiai told Naruto from out of nowhere. What? Talk to her, repeated the Kabutomushi. He got over his initial surprise and shook his head. I can't. You already did back in that throne room, remember? It was one time. You only need one to start with, Shikaka said with an air of wisdom. Although the other Biju ignored him, they could not deny that what he said was right. I had to touch her last time for her to hear me. Gaki, would you stop complaining and protesting and just get on with it already? Kurama demanded with a breath of irritation. We all know you're going to do it, might as well get it over with. He would have scowled and argued back, but the fox was right. He looked down at Sakura, who was finally walking away from the bed, changing into actual clothes. His cheeks went red with blushing and looked away. Oh, for fuck's sake, Sun grumbled. I'm just giving her some privacy. There was nothing wrong with that. Wasn't this one of your dreams when you were younger? Gyuki asked him, half curious and half suspicious. She's married now. And it's not because she's an old lady now? Come on, you know me better than that. Yes, he was a little bit of a pervert when he had been younger. Why else would he create his first signature jutsu? And yes, he had been trained by Jiraiya. But that did not mean he became a raging beast of lust and perversion. He still had lines, damn it. Can we get back to what he was supposed to be doing here? Komiya asked exasperation. Naruto, try jumping down and talking to her, he practically ordered his Jinchuriki. He was all too glad to do it. To his surprise, he found that he could move fairly easily. Well, easy enough to fall. Even though it was a dream, his training kicked in and landed in a roll that was only loud enough to make a muffled sound. But it was a dream and he was a ghost in it, making no sound. He came back up and saw Sakura was now fully dressed, garbed in travel-stained clothes. Sakura, he called out to her, but she continued to go about her business, turning for the stand that was next to the dresser her clothes had been in. Try being louder, Kurama told him. You're good at being that. He ignored the jibe. Sakura, he called out again, a little louder. There was a brief pause in her step, but it was gone as soon as it had appeared. He had seen it though, and that meant she had heard him. He had to try again. Sakura, he called out a third time, again a little louder. She paused, her head beginning to turn to look at where he was. But she stopped before she actually started. Instead, she walked over to the stand. There was a framed picture standing there. The frame itself was made in such a way that it could be folded into 3 parts. But the picture inside had no creases, which meant it had been folded gently every time it had been folded. Naruto walked up to Sakura's side and looked at it. It was a picture of Sakura's family, all of them. Both she and Sasuke stood together with their entire family in front of them. Everyone was smiling and he got the feeling that the mood had been happy when it had been taken. It was also an old photo because Sakura's hair was still pink in it. Miss you, the gray-haired Sakura whispered to the picture. She folded it up and put it away in her coat. She turned for the door and walked towards it. He started to follow her, only to have the floor shake on him. His feet wobbled and he almost fell over. What in the? He started to demand, only to wobble again when the floor shook a second time. What's going on here? I think it's time you went back to reality, Gaki, Kurama told him. He didn't know if there was some kind of way to actually do, but it seemed that the fox's suggestion was enough to bring him back to the tunnel. What's going on? He asked, feeling the ground shake all around him. Nice to have you back, Kasumi told him. The first distraction just happened and the gate just went bye-bye. The pitched battle is going on up there. She was completely calm, not wasting a single breath in panic or worry. When's the second distraction coming? 3 minutes. Once that happens, we move. Would they hurry the fuck up? Zaid groused, moving around behind the blonde. Despite his brief moment of complaint, that was all he gave. 3 minutes passed, and the calm came to life. EMP has been dropped, Morden spoke. Security is down. Have half hour before it's back up. Alright boys, Kasumi said to Naruto and Zaid, time to go. Follow my lead. She started crawling forward again, only to go upwards at an angle. Please not the toilet. Please not the toilet, Gyuki started praying again. I don't want to hear it, man, Naruto told the Hachibi instantly. Keep it to yourself. He followed Kasumi up the angle of the tunnel. The crawling got a little harder, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He almost ran into her feet again when she stopped. But then the feet vanished from sight, and there was a hole of dim light right in front of him. He crawled towards it, hoisting himself up once he could. The darkness of the tunnel was replaced with the sight of what he thought was a boiler room. It was dim enough to barely see through, and that was made more difficult from the steam. All he could see were pipes on the walls and large objects all around him. Kasumi stood nearby, obviously waiting for him and Zaid. He climbed out of the hole and got away from it, standing back up. Zaid soon followed him out of the hole. The merc took one look around the place and turned his gaze onto the thief. I thought you said you were taking us through the bathroom, he said angrily. And we are, she replied, pointing off to the side. Through the steam and dimness, the men could almost make out a door. That door leads to the bathroom I was talking about. With any luck, it'll be empty from those distractions. Any luck? He repeated incredulously. You never know when someone chooses to ignore the alarms and continue their trip to the bathroom. That's happened to me a couple of times. It wasn't pretty for them. There was a flicker of blue light, and then she disappeared from sight. Fuck, not that again. Still here, big boy, her voice spoke through the air, a mere whisper in the steam now. Get a move on. The next part of the plan depends on you two doing what you do best, making a racket. Zaid looked over at Naruto as they both went for the door. Remind me to kill that bitch when we get a chance, he said as he slid a silencer onto his weapon. Naruto preferred to the old-fashioned method, a kunai in each hand. I wouldn't do that, he said back to the merc. We need her. We need her now. We can get rid of her later. No. Besides, she might grow on you. He knew that she was doing that to him already. It was probably why he had worked with her during the blank period of his memory. But Zaid didn't seem to agree. I don't need anyone growing on me. The last time I let that happen, it bit me in the ass and threw me into a ditch full of shit. He grumbled mostly to himself, but still loud enough to be heard. That's graphic, Isabu commented as Naruto found the stairs leading up to the door. I wonder if it has something to do with that tattoo. Does it have something to do with your time in the Blue Suns? Naruto asked Zaid, not bothering to wait or beat around the bush. Yes, he said shortly. Leave it at that. I will for now. But they were going to be having a talk later. Nosy, Kurama told him. Shut up. The door didn't have a lock on it, just a simple push-lever bar. It opened with barely a squeal. Naruto went through first, kunai firmly gripped, while Zaid followed after him. They had no idea where Kasumi was, so they made the assumption she was following them. What lay beyond the door was a large public shower room that reminded the blonde a little of prison bathrooms, having seen the wreckage of a few during the war. There was no water running, which meant that there wasn't anyone else in there. Where's the exit? Zaid asked. Don't know, can't see it, Naruto replied. The room was large and corners they couldn't see around from where they stood. They would have to move up. You take the right, I'll take the left. Whistle if you find the door. They split up and stayed barely in sight of the other. As it turned, Naruto wasn't the one to find the door when he turned his corner. All he found were more shower heads, a couple of urinals, and what smelled like the faint scent of sex. Somebody was getting frisky, Matatabi remarked as she took in the scent. The scent was no more than 2 hours old, and was muffled by the smells of the showers themselves. Zaid's whistle cut low in the air of the bathroom, high enough to get the blonde's attention. He went to the merc's position, finding him at the sinks looking at the door opposite of them. The bitch still with us? He said. I don't think she's going to answer you like that, the shinobi replied drily. Let's keep moving. The door opened without announcing it. But as they stepped outside, they were hit with flashing lights and wailing sirens. Awooga! 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 Oh, for fuck's sake! Raged Naruto inside his head. Does that damn alarm have to be everywhere I go? I hope you don't plan on wanting an answer, Kurama replied, completely calm. Zaid paid no attention to the alarms wailing overhead. He knew, as did Naruto, that they weren't for them. They were for the teams who were playing distractions outside. He walked through the door and out into the corridor. Naruto followed him, doing his best to ignore the alarms. They knew where to go, having been told by Kasumi, and followed the corridor until it split 3 ways. They took the right corridor. It was empty except for the security cameras that had been blinded by the EMP bomb. The way kept splintering off, and Naruto did his best to remember which way he had to go. Thankfully, he wasn't going to be distracted too easily by different ways to go. He remembered the numbers he and Zaid had to take. Luck was on their side as they went deeper into the base since they didn't run into any tribal personnel before reaching their target, the security office. Doors locked tight, Zaid muttered as they approached the red-lit door. I'll take care of that, Kasumi said from nowhere. He swung his gun to where he thought the voice was coming from, but saw nothing. He scowled but brought his gun back into the ready position. As he did that, she appeared beside him, typing away at her Omni tool. They only had to wait a couple of seconds before the light turned green and the door opened. They both stepped through as she disappeared again and found the security team watching the screens. One of them, a Turian, turned his head at the sound of the door opening. WH? Was the only thing he said before Zaid fired off one shot, getting him right through the head, leaving a splatter of blood across the screens. The other guards turned towards them, but Naruto was already halfway across the room. He fell upon the three of them before they could even stand up or reach for their guns. His arms worked the old, methodical motions, flashing gleams of light from the screens as he swung them again and again. When he was done, they were dead. He flicked the kunai, getting the excess blood off, and pushed the dead guards in their chairs away from the screens with his foot. "All right, they're dead," he called out. "I know," Kasumi said as she came into sight, "I can see it." "How nice of you to join," Zaid said as he walked up to the both of them while still keeping an eye on the door. He had failed to do that once, and that was how he got those 3 bullet wounds in his lower back. "Working here, please hush," she told him without bothering to look up from her Omni tool. Naruto joined the merc and watched duty since there was nothing that he could do to help here. Time started to crawl past them as every second started to feel more like a minute, and a security team could arrive at any moment. Sure, they could take care of one group, but they would just keep coming and that would royally fuck up the plan. 15 minutes, Morden declared through the calm. "Geez, it's been that long already?" Naruto thought to himself. Time did to go fast on a mission. "No need to panic, Morden," Kasumi told the Solarian, still typing away on the Omni tool. "We're just about done," she declared, finally putting the Omni tool. The screens blinked green and lettering appeared on them all, declaring access granted. "Are we in?" the shinobi in the room asked the thief. "That we are," she said back. "We've got control of the alarms and the cameras." "Awooga! Awooga! 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 You think you could use the controls to turn off the alarms?" he asked her. "Seriously, they are becoming an earworm." She looked at him amusedly. "You still have that little problem then?" He just looked back at her. He had that problem during the blank period. Just how many of those damn alarms were out there? "This is ridiculous," he finally decided. "Just turn it off already." "Are you sure?" she asked him, still amused by his actions. "Oh, we don't have the time for this," Zaid told them both, giving the thief an especially hard look. "You're the one who said that, remember?" She didn't reply. She turned back around to the screens and quickly danced her fingers across the keyboards. It didn't take long before the alarms went silent and the blonde amongst them sighed in relief. "There, alarms are quiet and the cameras are ours. We can move on with the next phase of the plan. Naruto, if you would?" "On it," he told her, reaching for the calm demolition team. "Check in." "This is demolition team, we hear you," Quan Misley replied. If they hadn't moved from their first spot, the hunter along with Morden, Eric, and Miranda were around the back of the base, waiting near a guarded entrance. "We have control of the security. Once the guards leave, go find your targets, rig up the bombs, and stand by for my call before blowing them to hell." "Acknowledged, demolition team waiting." He looked at Kasumi, who was already working at the keyboards again. Then he went back to the calm fighting team. "We have control of security. The lights and cameras focused on the yard are going to go dark in a couple of seconds. Switch from overt to covert as soon as that happens and get inside." The next part of their portion did not sit all that well with him, but he knew that there also wasn't much of an option. "Once you're inside, find the barracks. Kill the people you find inside." "Understood," Gurus replied. There was the sound of his rifle firing before the calm went dead. Naruto knew that he didn't agree with what had to happen, just like he did. But they did not to be caught by the huntress or the tribe while on their base. If one person was able to escape and get away, they would to make contact and that would be it. They couldn't let that happen. Satisfied with what he had heard, the blonde turned to look over at Zaid. "You ready to move?" "I was getting bored," the merc replied with a frown. "Sheesh, he's grumpy," Gyuki commented. "Was it the claustrophobia that made him like that?" "Maybe he's grumpy because he's on a mission and everyone else is taking too long," Komiai offered. "Or it could be that time of the month again," Shikaku suggested, which got looks from everyone else. "What? I wasn't the only one thinking it." "We had the sense to keep it quiet, unlike you," Kurama told him. Naruto decided to end it there. "While I'm glad the lot of you are defending my honor by taking insult potshots at Zaid, could you do it later? I'm trying to focus here." "Defending your honor?" the fox repeated. "This is us enjoying ourselves. You can go take a hike." "That's what I'm about to do, you moronic fox." "Ooh, burn!" Shikaku laughed. "Come on, let's move. I want to make sure that we get to her before they have a chance to move her," Naruto said to Zaid. As the two of them walked to the door, he looked back at Kasumi. "You coming or what?" he asked. If it's all the same to you, I'm going to stay here, she replied. I need to make sure I wasn't seen on any camera in the base. I can also make sure you're not caught off guard out there in here. So, you go and find the target and the information. I'll stay here and watch your asses. He got a sense of satisfied relief when she said those words. That was why he left the room without saying another word. As he stepped back into the corridor alongside Zaid, they had their weapons at the ready again. A Solarian guard came into sight to their left, running at a pace with his gun in hand. What? He started to ask. It was as far as he got before Naruto threw the kunai. The two flew down the hall and impaled the guard right in the eyes. Blood started flooding out as the body fell to the ground. He didn't waste time, walking over to the body and grabbing the kunai, yanking them out and getting more spurts of blood on his armor. He ignored it and went down the corridor, Zaid right behind him. As they went through the base, they kept an eye out for signs that could help them. Fortunately for them, they had those in plenty since whoever had designed and built the base had also installed signs that told them which way something was. You think she's in the labs? Naruto asked Zaid as they turned left, following what the sign had said. Depends, he replied. On what? On whether they've got more than one lab. Good point. Why didn't I think of that? Don't know, don't care. They found a door that led to a staircase. Seeing the concrete stairs going up and down actually brought a sense of relief to Naruto. He was glad to see things that hadn't changed through the millennium. But it also brought a question to his mind. Did they go up or down? What do you think? Zaid asked him, looking downwards with his gun. Split up? He shook his head instantly. Too risky, he declared. We need to figure out how to get to the labs and we need to know which way to get there. You'd better get to talking to Kasumi then, Kokuo said. I know that, he replied, already reaching for the calm Kasumi. We need your help. You always do, she replied, sounding as amused as the last time. Would you cut the crap? Zaid demanded, joining the conversation even though he still kept looking down the staircase. Where the hell are the labs? Say please. Kasumi, Naruto said to her with a voice full of chastisement and slight irritation, something that came to him rather easily. Surprisingly enough, we don't have time for that. Just tell us where the labs are. All right, give me a moment. As much as Zaid wanted to say what he was thinking aloud, he knew it would be fairly pointless to do so. He was a professional, if a crude and rude one, and there was a time for complaining and this wasn't one of those times. So, he settled for thinking it. Not like we could fucking do anything else? All right, got it, Kasumi declared. They're on the 4th floor, near the top of the base. And luck is on your side, the target is in there. I guess she likes to do some late-night research. Which floor are we on, Kasumi? Naruto asked her. The 2nd floor, and before you asked me how that's possible, the boiler room was on the 1st. I wasn't gonna. Were you? He asked Zaid. Nope, he answered. Sorry, old habit, the thief said. Kurama smirked. I bet she picked it up while she was with you, Gaki. Naruto ignored the fox for favor of the calm. Alright, we're in a stairwell right now. Can you find us? Nope, there are no cameras in the stairwells. I'm guessing no one thought it would be needed or they would just be taking the elevator all the time. The amused tone was still there, but it was also mixed with what either sounded like disbelief or exasperation. We're in the northeast stairwell, Zaid told her, looking at the lettering on the wall. 1 stair flight down. Find the blueprints and go from there. Oh yes. Why didn't I ever think of that? The sarcasm in her voice was thick enough to be used as a spread on bread. I'm going to kill her, he said to Naruto as the calm went dead. No, you won't. Who's going to stop me? You. The merc demanded challengingly. You'll stop yourself from doing it. Let's move. He went for the flight up. He heard the merc follow. The flight was about 15 steps long before turning to the left at the usual right angle. Unlike the stairwells the blonde was used to, this one did not have a door. But the next one did, and Naruto knew that it would be a long hike up the stairs. You could always jump between the rails, Isabu suggested. The distance between them looks wide enough to do. I could do it, he agreed as he went up the next flight of steps, but can Zaid? Why don't you ask him? He turned his head slightly so he could look at the merc. Hey Zaid, can you jump between the rails? The merc looked puzzled and it showed in his voice too. What the hell does that mean? Never mind, the blonde said, turning his attention back to the steps. It looked like they were just going to go up the normal way. By the time they reached the door to the 4th level, they had that burning feeling in their legs that could only come from that kind of a workout. Thankfully, the door's light was green and opened for them. Naruto stepped through first and took a look around. It looked the same as the 2nd floor, but he could also smell a slight scent of disinfectant in the air. "Gaki, behind you!" shouted Kurama suddenly. He whipped around and saw that the door was closing, its light going red. Zaid was still on the other side with a look of surprise on his face as the door closed. The blonde lunged forward and grabbed the 2 sides of the door. Normally that kind of move wouldn't have stopped the door, and his hands would have been crushed. But he pumped his chakra into the armor, letting it enhance his strength. It was a new move he found out only recently but could easily see the benefits of. But he did wonder if whoever came up with the design of the armor took it from Tsunade. The door shuddered to a halt as he kept it open by force. But his arms were shaking and he knew that what he was doing wouldn't hold for long. "Any time you want to step through?" he asked Zaid in a strained voice. The merc got the hint and came through the door. He let go of the door with an explosive breath and watched as it closed. He cut the flow of chakra to the armor, and his arms immediately felt sore. There was also a slight feeling of heat all over his body, like he had been out in the sun too long. That was probably from the remaining inhibitors in his body. "What the hell was that?" Zaid demanded into the calm. "You trying to be funny here, bitch?" "Hey now, that wasn't me," Kasumi said in protest. "I wouldn't have fun like that on this kind of mission." "So who the fuck did it?" he growled. He cast a quick look at his teammate, and once he saw that the blonde was fine, he turned his attention back to the rest of the level. It seemed clean, almost unbelievably so. Every surface was clean and polished. They probably would have given off sparkles if that was possible. "I don't know." "That's helpful. Do you have any theories, Kasumi?" Naruto asked, daring to raise an arm to the comms so he could join the conversation. "It could be that the door has a glitch that they haven't gotten around to fixing it yet, or a malfunction that they haven't gotten around to fixing yet. Or—" Her voice trailed off, leaving them hanging for what she was going to say next. "Oh hell, they did build one. I must be getting rusty if I didn't think of that." Zaid didn't know what she was talking about, and it was fairly irritating. "Care to key the rest of us in here?" he asked. "They've got another security room. They must be watching you through that one." His mood, which was already bad, soured even more. "Fucking hell," he swore. "Could anything—" "Don't finish that sentence," Naruto warned him instantly. "You do that and it will happen." The merc gave the blonde a look of disbelief at how he phrased the sentence. "You can say the word." He shook his head. "No, it's best not to. If I do, it's going to happen." He turned his attention back to the calm Kasumi. "Where's the 2nd security room?" "I don't know, but I'm working on it right now. But if you want to get it neutralized, someone's going to have to be diverted. You send that person to the 2nd office. I'll lead them on from there." He considered his options in a quick moment. Neither he nor Zaid could deviate from their path. They were too close to the labs. That left the distraction teams. Once he came to that conclusion, there was only one way to go. "Fighting team, come in." "This is fighting team," Gurus replied. "There's been a change of plans. I need your team to deviate from their mission for something else." "Why?" "There's another security room. Your team has to take care of it, and make sure Kasumi gets in safely. Once that's done, you want us to go back on mission?" "If you can," he finished, ending the calm line. "If they couldn't, they would probably have to hunker down and protect that office." He thumped Zaid's shoulder lightly. "Let's go." They went down the corridor, treading carefully. The smell of disinfectant was all around them and seemed to get stronger with each step they took. Naruto hated that smell. Not only did it remind him of the hospital in Konoha when he usually ended up there, but it also reminded him of the lab he woke up in. The memory of that place made his anger against the tribe start to grow again. But even as it grew, he squashed it down. Now wasn't the time for burning rage, it was time for cold precision. "Kasumi, where is she?" he asked as the two of them went into a 4-way cross. He checked the left while Zaid checked the right. There was no one there, but they didn't let their guard down. For all they knew, they were under watch right now and could be ambushed at any second. "Working on it," the thief replied. "Work on it faster," Zaid told her. "This is not exactly an easy thing to do when there's another security console out there that can possibly block me. If you don't want me to get caught, Shut up and let me focus. Have I already said that I like her? Komi asked. Yes, you did, Matatabi replied. Well, I'll say it again. I like her. Alright, I had to work my back through the cameras, but I got something here, Kasumi announced. She's at the far end of the floor. Go straight down the corridor in front of you. I'll tell when to turn and when to not. On the way, he replied. He and Zaid went down the corridor as instructed, the disinfectant smell still following them with every step. When they came to the next crossroads, they found a trio of guards waiting there. There was a curve to the wall that prevented the guards from seeing them right away, which they used to their advantage. They plastered their backs against it and began to plan. Switch to chakra clips if you've got them, Naruto told Zaid. He was already sheathing his kunai and pulling out his guns, changing the clips. I'll stick to the thermal if it's all the same to you. He liked them. They were simple, effective, and there was no weird shit that happened along with them. How you want to do this? The blonde finished inserting the right end clips into his warhawks. I'll paralyze you, finish them off. He nodded agreement and said, works for me. Move on 3. 1, 2, 3. He stepped out of cover with his guns aiming high. The guards saw him in response and started shooting right away. He could feel the bullets hitting his armor and shields, but ignored it all the same. He fired off 3 rounds, right at their lower torsos. The bullets and the chakra took care of the rest, lightning arcing through their rimrod stiff bodies. Zaid stepped out next and shot them dead. As the bodies fell, they stepped over them and kept on moving. Kasumi's voice came back to them as they reached a set of doors on each side of the hallway. Ignore them, they're just empty labs. They did just that and walked past them. But then she let out an explosive fuck. What is it? Naruto asked her instantly. You're going to have company. His eyes started scanning every possible way the tribe personnel could come at him, looking at corridors, labs, and nook. Where are they? Well, not where you are. That was probably supposed to be comforting news, but both he and Zaid breathed out exasperated sounds. Then where the hell are they? The merc demanded. Currently, they're gathering around the target like dogs protecting a puppy. I think they're getting ready to move her out. We can't let that happen, Naruto said. How far away are we? Depends on your speed, she replied, half in glib but also in seriousness. He took the seriousness of it and looked over at Zaid. How about you? He asked. Don't worry, I'll keep up. I'm hoping. Kasumi, how far away? He asked through the comm again. If you're going at your regular shinobi speed, I'd say 5 minutes. He looked at each path he hadn't taken, looking at how far it went before it turned, twisted, or stopped because of a door. Is it going to be a straight shot? No. There are a few turns in the way. He knew that was going to be the case, but it still would have been nice if it had been straight. Just tell me where to go. That was the plan. But you'd better hurry. She's starting for the door. Then we need to distract them. He switched the comm channel. Demolition team, are you ready? Yes, waiting for confirmation, Morden answered. Blow it, then go do fighting's original mission. He switched the channel back and asked Kasumi, which way? First off, to your left. He turned to the direction said and saw another hallway with more doors. Try to keep up, he told Zaid before he bolted down the hallway. Due to his extensive training both before and during the war, Naruto's speed had increased to the point where his normal speed meant he was able to clear the length of the hallway, which was about 75 feet long, in 7 seconds without breaking a sweat. The sweat breaking at normal would occur after 3 to 4 hours of continuous running and was conditional on whether or not he had something to drink beforehand. He could up his speed to faster levels, with the highest being appropriately labeled Rock Lee while on sugar high, but that would mean his sweat breaking point would come sooner, and he would have to stop sooner. The aforementioned level could only be managed for 5 minutes and left him panting like he just had a sex marathon and in need for a good drink of water. Oddly enough, it was Shikamaru who gave the description, which made the rest of the Konoha 12 wonder how he knew what the end of a sex marathon sounded like. As far as they knew, he and Temari were then just casually dating. Turn right, Kasumi told him when he reached the end of the hallway. He planted his feet down and banked hard in the direction spoken. He slid a few inches as he tried to turn, but once his feet were in the right direction, he took off again. The hallway came up quicker and she spoke again. Keep going forward, ignore the other corridors. He kept going and going, turning when he had to turn and banking hard to do so. He was probably leaving skid marks in his tracks, but he didn't care. His armor wasn't like cheap sandals, they could handle the pressure. If they hadn't, they'd be up in flames by now. Guards came into his path, but he shot them down, running past the paralyzed bodies without a second's glance at them. He turned left. He turned right. He took the second door on the right. He went to the second level in the room to get to the door on the far left. All the orders Kasumi gave him came quick and left just as quickly. It didn't matter to him how fast they were coming, so long as they came and he followed them. The hallways and corridors themselves were beginning to melt together into one hurried vision of what they were, but he didn't pay any attention to it. Getting to the target before she was taken away was the objective here. He heard the explosions and felt them too. But it sounded too dull to his ears, like it was coming through several slabs of steel, and barely felt it as well. He didn't stumble, or anything close to that. He just kept moving forward. "Turn this left, and you'll be there," Kasumi told him as he came up to a split off in the corridor. He started to bank into the turn and saw that the guards probably protecting Urzia were out in the corridor. They must have been going to see what the explosions had been, but instead found him. It was too late to not bank, and they would start shooting if he was to run away, not that he would. There was only one course of action he could take. He leapt forward out of the bank and descended upon them like a tiger catching its prey. The only thing any of them were able to say before he laid hands on them was "Holy Fu!" Naruto grabbed his neck and twisted. The body fell to the ground, taking the armored blonde with it. He pushed up into a handstand and swung his legs around in a helicopter kick, knocking the rest of them down. He sprang to his feet and pulled out the guns again, firing off one bullet per guard. He stepped over the dead bodies and headed for the green-lit door before him. "Is this it?" "Yes, it is," Kasumi answered him. "Where's Zaid?" "Oh, don't worry, he's coming." He heard a ragged panting sound getting louder and louder behind him. He turned around and saw Zaid standing there, hands on his knees and panting like he was holding on to dear life. "You good?" the blonde asked him. He didn't answer right away, too busy breathing. When he was finally able to form coherent words, he said between pants, "I think the standards of shinobi have fallen since you got sealed." That puzzled Naruto. "What makes you say that?" "That was definitely not normal shinobi speed." "No, it was. I just had to up the training during the war. It was either that or die." "Naruto, the door!" shouted Kasumi suddenly. He turned around to see the green light going red and the door closing. "Shit!" On instinct he upped the speed and leapt through the closing door. He cleared it by an inch, and it closed with a hissing snap. "Kasumi, get it open," he ordered, looking at the closed door. "Working on it, but the other security console is trying to stall me. They found out what I've been doing." He switched the comm channel to the other team. "Fighting team, have you located the second security office?" "Working on it now," Geras told him. "Work on it faster. They're onto us and are going to try to block us now." "Understood. We might be close. You'll know when we find it." The line went dead with that. "Zaid, you're going to have to hold tight," the blonde said through the door. "It might be a while until this door opens." "What's a while?" the merc asked, his voice slightly muffled, from the other side. "I don't know." "Well, that's just fucking great. Why don't you just have Gua?" "Don't finish that sentence," he shouted instantly. "What?" "Why?" "For the same reason I cut you off last time. Look, just stay there while I handle what's in here, alright?" He heard the merc snort in derision. "Not like I can do anything else, moron." The blonde shinobi chose to ignore that and turned his attention back to who else was in the lab. Urzia stood with her back against the table, holding onto it for support and comfort. She wasn't trying to tremble in fear, but it was a losing battle. Who are you people?" she asked, her nervousness twinging her voice. With a line like that, he was tempted to deliver a classic line in return, like "Don't you recognize me?" But he dismissed the idea for two reasons. The first was that now wasn't the time for that kind of thing. The second was that she couldn't see his face. "Why don't you do something about it then?" Kurama asked him. "I'm already doing it," he replied, sheathing one of the war hawks and reaching up for the back of his helmet. She watched in terrified fascination as the helmet peeled itself back across the man's head. But when she saw that blonde hair and blue eyes, she did something Naruto did not expect. She breathed in relief. "Oh, thank the goddess, it's just you." He was caught a little off guard by those words. He had been hunting after her more or less since he had woken up, chasing after her dust trail by going after breadcrumbs, and this was the reaction he got. There was only one thing he could think to say. What? I'd never think that you would finally get here. What I've done, what they've asked me ever since you made them come to me, it's been more than I ever wanted. She said it all with a tone of satisfied wonder. But then it took a turn for the disturbed and rattled. But they've had me to do things that I didn't want to do. The first time I saw your body on the table, I almost couldn't do it. He took a few accusative steps towards her, the remaining gun in his hand beginning to point up. So you are the one that put the inhibitors in me. She nodded. I did. He reached her, standing only a foot away from her, and keeping the gun pointing right at her. How could you do that to someone you knew? I thought you were someone who had standards, morals. Did you abandon it just so you could finally get what you always wanted? She looked at the gun and then at him. Her eyes spoke of her confusion, and it made him confused. Why would she be the one confused? She had been the one to do this to him. Oh goddess, you don't remember, do you? She asked him. I've been getting that a lot recently. He brought the gun in a little closer. Okay, people, Kasumi announced over the comm, I've got a piece of good news and two pieces of bad news. The good news is the second security console has been taken over by yours truly, so we now have complete control of the base. The first piece of bad news is that we've got a ship with tribe signals flying fast towards the planet. The second problem is that we've got an alliance ship coming this way too, and it looks like it's got a Citadel ship with it as well. I think it's safe to say that we've currently landed in some shit. Fucking hell, of all the time for this kind of shit to happen. Raged Naruto inside his own head. There were problems enough, they didn't need more, but they keep piling up. He took his attention away from Urzia and started pacing around the lab. Story of your life, Gaki, Kurama told him. What are you going to do about it? I'm thinking. But first, he had to get his answer. He turned his attention back to Urzia. He walked up to her and got face to face, making sure she could see the gun. Tell me why you put those inhibitors in me, he practically ordered her. She looked at the gun and then at him. She said only one thing. Because you told me to. Codex entry, historical child soldiers. Sub-entry, shinobi history. It is acknowledged that many, if not all, races in the galaxy have, at some point in their past, employed child soldiers in war. However, none have done so brazenly and bluntly as the elemental countries of Earth, and the shinobi residing there. During the time before the founding of hidden villages, children were taught how to fight and then immediately sent to the battlegrounds. It is needless to say that the death toll during that time was astronomically high. After the first hidden village was formed, see Konoha, the death toll did go down considerably, but the shinobi still deployed children to battles. Shinobi at the time were promoted and ranked by their merit, skill, and ability to manipulate chakra. As such, even though they had an academy, children were able to graduate from there before they had turned 10 years old and even be promoted to jonin before they had finished adolescence. While the shinobi had paid no great attention to this matter, it came to the forefront of the War of Three Flags. Both Midgard and the frontier were sending adult men and women into battle, and while the Shinobi Alliance was doing the same, they were also sending children. While there are many instances of this happening, two events come to the front. One of them was a victory for the Shinobi Alliance against the frontier, see Night of the Quiet Laughs, and the second was an even that spurned the Alliance to victory, see Unreikyo Massacre. Both Midgard and the Empire of Steel, appalled at the fact that they were fighting children, begged and pleaded with the Alliance to stop with the practice. Since the death toll matched that of the Fourth Shinobi World War, the shinobi could see why they had been asked that, and were actually considering it. The fact that the daimyos refused to even think on the subject was one of the reasons the next war the elemental countries were involved in was a civil one, see Shinobi Uprising. Chapter 49. We have company and not the good kind. Location, Horizon. This has got to be the dumbest idea you've had yet, Kurama told his Jinchuriki as he stood with his team in the base's courtyard. Before the blonde's team had come and gone through, the place had looked clean and respectable, like one could relax or train if they had to. Now, it looked like someone wanted to start a war only to quit halfway through. You've said that a lot, Naruto replied easily. Probably even more so even since I woke up from that rock. I meant it every time. I'm sure you do, but every time you call one of my ideas the dumbest one, that's usually the one that gets everyone out alive at the end of it. He does have a point, Gyuki agreed. That does tend to happen. Even so, this is dumbness of epic proportions, the fox argued. Not even his sensei would agree to this one, and I've seen that lazy ass agree to things just so he could get out of work and be amused at the same time. The blonde heard that comment, and felt the need to defend his old teacher. In Kakashi-sensei's defense, he was running low on sleep then. Once he was ordered to sleep through the weekend, he was much better. You guys might want to stop the argument, Isabu told them all. The first group is coming this way. They're in sight. Naruto turned his attention across the war-torn yard. He saw who it was coming through the gate, and simultaneously breathed a sigh of relief and nervousness. For the love of Kami, it had to be her. What is my luck doing to me? He watched in silence as Ashley walked across the yard with a full contingent of Alliance soldiers behind her. Forget about her, Gyuki told him. He's here with her. That cannot be good. He knew that. He could see Nihilus walking right beside Ashley with his own group of soldiers following him. This group was a mixture of Turians, Asari, and Solarians, and they looked around nervously even though they tried not to show it. Naruto saw the looks and their attempts. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He leaned close to Geras and whispered, he brought cherries with him. If Geras hadn't remembered the day the Normandy had been attacked, he would have thought the phrase to be a little odd. But he understood what the blonde meant. I can see that, he whispered back. At least the Alliance soldiers look like they've been through a couple of battles. Unlike Nihilus's group, the group following Ashley kept their gazes straight, and their hands steady. I hope you know what you're doing, Naruto. I do. He didn't move his head, but there was a flick of his eyes over to him. Are you lying to make me feel better? If it makes you feel better. Can we just kill these guys? Grunt asked, standing behind Naruto, glaring at the incoming soldiers with hostility. No, Grunt, he told his student. We don't even know why they're here. And remember that they are not the only ones who are here. Kasumi did delay the tribe's ship, right? Asked Geras. He had a bad feeling about who was on that ship and didn't want to be proven right about it. That's what she told me. The thief stayed inside, defending her action by she wasn't about to get caught by the tribe, the Alliance, or the Council. Naruto couldn't blame her for the opinion and let her do it. Miranda and Jacob had wanted to disappear too, but that he was not going to allow. Well, they're here. Nothing we can do now. No, there was something they could do, and the blonde was determined to keep it so. Only show them what's been going on, he said to the Turian. Once the approaching group was close enough, he stepped forward, stopping a few steps away from them. He was really glad that he was wearing his helmet. If he hadn't, he had a feeling the beginning of the meeting wouldn't be as good as the rest of it. Of course, he knew that it was going to have to come at some point. Good evening, he said pleasantly. It's a bit late for a social call. Gaki, not the time for sarcasm or humor, Kurama chastised him. There is always time for sarcasm and humor, he replied. The fox groaned. Either you're spending too much time with the Tanuki, or I'm beginning to regret the time you spent with Ibiki. Hey! Shikaka protested. No one paid attention to him. Nihilus raised his gun, pointing it right at him. Ashley and the rest of their men did the same. Hands where we can see them, the Spectre ordered him, nice and slow. Behind him, he heard his own team start to draw their weapons. Easy does it, guys, he said without turning his head to look at them. We don't need this to turn into a slaughter. They ain't gonna take you, Ruko growled, pointing her gun right at the woman looking really hard at her brother. They're not going to. I'm sure that they have a good reason for being here. He brought his hands up slowly, like he had been asked. Well, do you have a good reason? We received a distress signal from this base and were sent to investigate, Nihilus said in response. We were expecting to find some kind of attack going on, but instead we find this. He jerked his head at the head. Do you know what happened here? Well, of course he knows what happened here, a new voice said from behind them. It was a voice that Naruto knew well, although now it sounded like it was grating metal each time the woman spoke. People started pushing themselves through the visiting groups, doing so with the confidence and roughness that only came with years of combat and questionable morals or just not giving a damn. At their head was the huntress, but she looked more like a machine Asari instead of an actual one now. Her left eye was a burning red that managed to convey the hatred it had for Naruto easily when she looked at him. Her cheekbones were encased in metal exoskeleton, and it was the only thing that was keeping them in shape, same thing as her fringe. Her right arm was encased in the same exoskeleton from her fingers to just past her elbow. Those were the only ones that were visible, but he knew that there was more. Who are you? Ashley asked, swinging focused eyes onto her. Someone who is way above your pay grade and rank, human, the huntress said dismissively. Her actual eye saw her and immediately disregarded her as a threat. To Naruto, that was her first mistake. But not above mine, Nihilus said, turning his attention to the cyborg Asari standing beside him. She actually had the audacity to snort in derision at his tone. Trust me, big boy, you are definitely not on the same rank as mine, so don't try measuring your dick to mine. You'd lose by a wide margin. You might want to rethink that idea, he told the huntress, his voice cold and practical. My name is Nihilus Cryek. I'm a Spectre with the Citadel Council. Now tell me who you are, your rank, and what organization you are with if you've managed to get the Council to send a rescue op down here. Naruto saw the brief moment of panic in the huntress's eye when she heard what the Turian was and realized something. She didn't think that someone that high up would be sent. She probably thought that a middle-rank person would come, someone she could bully into doing whatever it she needed out of him to get me into trouble. If she hadn't thought a Spectre would come, that meant he had a chance of getting out of this alive. It also helped that he knew Nihilus personally. I wouldn't put that angle into use, Saiken cautioned him. It's kind of doubtful. What do you mean? I mean you don't actually know Nihilus. That's bull. Of course I know him. He was in a medically induced coma for the majority of your time together. I wouldn't call that knowing him. That is a good point, Gyuki admitted. Hold up, she's making a comeback, Sun called out, getting everyone's attention. Let's hear what kind of bullshit she's going to make up. My ranking is classified, the huntress told Nihilus. You can call me the huntress. I am with the tribe of Athame. This is one of our bases and that man, she pointed an accusing middle finger at Naruto, has attacked and destroyed it. Nihilus looked skeptical at her words, like he wasn't sure if he should believe what she was saying. Ashley had the same look on her face, only more obvious. What the hell is the tribe of Athame? She asked. The huntress barely turned her gaze onto her, and it spoke volumes about what she thought of the human before even asking, Who are you? Ashley Uchiha, prospective Spectre, she answered without missing a beat. So, you want to tell me what the tribe of Athame is? If you're not read in, I do not have to tell you what it is. She looked back at Nihilus. If you are here to investigate the attack on the base, then please help me take that man into custody, she said, pointing at Naruto. If there was ever a moment to open his mouth, it was then. What about my team? He asked. What were you planning on doing with them? I don't give a shit. Well, that's rude. Naruto, snapped Kurama. Stay serious. I was. He protested. She ignored him and turned her attention back to Nihilus. Do I have your help? You know, you might want to do something about this, Saiken said to the helmeted blonde. Otherwise, he's going to follow her lead. He looks half convinced already. That was a very good point and one Naruto pounced on immediately. You know, I wouldn't be so quick to take her word for granted already. He spoke out loudly so everyone could hear him. She's the one who's been hunting me ever since I got out of that fucking lab. Nihilus looked at him with a neutral expression. Does this have anything to do with your attack on this base? Do you deny attacking the base in the first place? Ashley added. Nihilus looked like he was about to throw her a reprimanding look, but stopped halfway and eventually didn't. He probably did that because what she said had been a good point. No, I'm not denying it, he replied. But I had a good reason. I'm sure you did. There was no way the sarcasm and disgust in her voice could have been hidden. It was too thick to happen. But in that thick blanket of sarcastic and disgust, he had an opening. I'm feeling a little offended here, Ash. I would have thought you believed me when I said I had a reason, he told her, sounding hurt as he said. She looked confused and surprised at the same time when she heard those words. Then those two emotions vanished and were replaced with suspicion. How do you know my name? She asked, raising her gun just a little bit higher. Naruto, the helmet, Matatabi told him. You need to peel back the helmet. I know, give me a second. The Nibby sighed, you and your theatrics. I'm not that bad. He reached up for the back of his helmet and pressed down. He watched both her and Nihilus as his face came into sight. Their eyes widened into surprise, shock, and disbelief. Hey guys, he said, it's good to see you again. Na Naruto? Asked Ashley in a voice that was stuttering bordering on hiccuping. What are you doing here? Finding answers to my situation, he replied before he looked over at the huntress. And that is something she is trying to prevent. Nihilus got rid of his surprise quicker than Ashley did, and watched him more closely. This should be impossible, he said. Naruto Uzumaki was reported Kia after the Normandy State Route 1 was destroyed 2 years ago. How do we know that you are the real Naruto? He had a response to that. Who else saved your ass on Eden Prime, both when Saren pulled a gun on you and made sure that medic team would be sent? If that's not enough, how about this? You ordered me to finish the mission rather than tend to you. The Turian didn't lower his gun completely, but he did lower it enough for him to stop being a threat. It's really you. Yep, he replied like it was nothing big. That shouldn't matter, the huntress growled, a little annoyed at how the conversation had turned. He looked at her like she had lost a couple of IQ points and didn't recognize it. But it does. She disregarded him like she always did and looked at Nihilus. He attacked a sanctioned Citadel Council base. I want him arrested. Council Spectre, right here, the blonde said, pointing at himself with his own thumb. You were dead, that license was revoked. He gave her a look. You'd think that I'd buy that line from you? Ashley wasn't the only one who kept moving her eyes back and forth between the huntress and the blonde shinobi. The entire alliance group behind her was doing the same thing. Finally, she asked him, Naruto, what's going on here? He looked at her for a brief moment. Then a smile slid across his face. It was a smile that was vulpine in nature, something that made her want to shudder and look away because she knew that smile somehow meant that things were about to get really real and really heavy, and, depending on what side you were on, really bad. You should probably know about the goals of the tribe, since you are a promising Spectre agent. You be silent, the huntress ordered. Why would I? I'm spilling the beans. You shut up right now or I will shoot you and fuck my orders. That smirk grew wider as Nihilus narrowed his eyes into suspicious ones. Orders? He repeated, looking at the huntress. What orders? And she just dug herself into her own pit, Shikaku declared, way to go. Sick her, Kurama ordered. Yes, master, Naruto replied, don't worry, I was getting right on it. Then why are you wasting time talking to us? Go and burn the bitch already. The fox had a point, even if he was being an ass about it. You see, Ash, the goal of the tribe is quite simple. They are to get their hands on Churka by any means necessary and study in order to further aid the council. She stared at him in abject horror. What? But wait, he wasn't done. To that end, the tribe saw an apparent golden opportunity and took it without missing a beat, ambushing the Normandy, destroying it, and kidnapping me to hold an experiment on my body for the better part of 2 years. They even designed something even more horrible, a series of inhibitors in my body that block off my access to my chakra, also they could control me if I ever broke out. That lady over there, he pointed absently over at the huntress, has been hunting me down because I did get out. Her job is to take me back so further experiments can be done. 3, 2, 1. The Biju counted down as they waited for the Alliance soldiers to explode from the news. When it came to this kind of countdown, they had a near-spotless record. The near is an event that they have sworn to never talk about again, no matter how many times Naruto badgered them for it. And boom goes the dynamite, Kurama casually declared. True enough, as soon as he finished speaking, the Alliance group went off into a furious, confused mess of angry shouting and yelling. Of all! How could? How dare they? Those fucking BAS. They did this too. They should. Do, someone outa. I will, yes. Why would? Fucking. Mow them down. Kill. Would you think it's safe to say that they are mad now? Shikaku asked with a snigger to his voice. Mad? They're steaming, Sun retorted. Look at them. We could probably roast a slab over the steam coming off their heads. What's with this wee stuff? Naruto asked the Yonbi. I'm the one who's going to be cooking it. Yeah, but you'd be willing to share, right? You're made of chakra. You don't need food. Now who told you that? The gorilla asked, actually sounding offended by those words. It might have worked, if Naruto didn't have the right words to say back to him. How about the fact that I have never once heard any of you complain that you were hungry or asking me for food? Would that work? He's got you there, Koko acknowledged. I've never complained about being hungry. How can? Why could? Why did they? They need to. Make them. I think they are really getting angry now, Komi commented as he watched the anger continue to grow. And? Asked Shikaku. We should probably do something about it. Why should we? We're having fun watching this. No, you're having fun. Actually, I'm having fun too, Saiken admitted. Same here, Gyuki agreed. Ditto, Kurama said. The Nanabi looked at them all before fluttering its wings in annoyance, showing that it had given up the argument. Nevertheless, I still think that Naruto should do something. That alliance group looks like it's about to open fire on the aliens. Actually, I think that Ash has it taken care of, Naruto remarked as he watched his former teammate lift her gun into the air and fire off a few rounds. Everyone fell silent as the shots echoed in the air, overriding the shouting and the arguments that were flying everywhere. Ashley looked at them all with her Sharingan blazing alongside a scowl on her face. Are you all done now? She asked in a voice that was about 2 steps away from shouting. But sir, they kidnapped. We can't just. They really don't get the point, do they? Naruto thought to himself as she raised the gun. She wasn't asking. A few more shots silenced the protesters. I said, are you done now? She roared at the soldiers. They nodded like chastised children, which Naruto knew his team found a little humorous. He could hear the suppressed snorts and giggles. Good. Now listen up. You're not a fucking mob out for someone's blood. You are Alliance military. Act like it. We do not attack someone until we have absolute proof that they have done something that warrants an attack. Until then, I am not going to have this place turn into a bloodbath and note in history that said relations between the Council and the Alliance soured here. Am I understood? She barked out. Yes, sir, they replied, perhaps a little too sullenly. I can't hear you. She barked louder. Sir, yes, sir. They replied just as loudly. Good. She turned to look at Nihilus. I apologize for use of force, sir. Even though she said the words, there was no hint of apology in her stance or her face. The huntress regarded her with disdain that could only come from her. Is that how an alliance treats her soldiers? Such a disgrace, she declared, sniffing in the way only an Asari could pull off. Oh, you cannot let this one slide, Matatabi told Naruto. Trust me, wasn't going to, he replied. You're hardly one to talk, he told the huntress. Last time I checked, you were of the opinion that disagreeing soldiers under your command were fine to be shot and killed. All right, that's enough, Nihilus said firmly to them all, taking control of the situation again. The huntress was angry and wanted to continue the conversation. I said that's enough, he said again, even more firmly than before. She looked at him again, rage and fury showing in her organic eye. You presume to give me orders? Naruto wanted so badly to shout out Council Spectre, idiot, but Nihilus had the situation well in hand. I will not repeat myself a third time, he told her, making sure that she could see his gun easily. Her face grimaced into what could be a scowl, if the metal didn't already make it worse than it was. He ignored her and looked back at Naruto. I assume that you have proof of your claim? Yes, of course I do, the blonde shinobi replied. I've been going after the tribe to try and find out who put the inhibitors in me and to get them out. And are you sure these inhibitors do what you claim they do? That was a question that could land him in trouble, if he wasn't careful. But he did know a way that would get him out of the hole in front of him, and shed him of any trouble. The only downside was that he was going to be in a lot of pain. Are you saying you want a demonstration? He asked his fellow Spectre. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Are you sure you're sure? Naruto, he snapped, getting a little annoyed with him. Are you trying to stall me? No, absolutely not, the blonde said, sounding like he was the one who should be offended. Why would I do that to you? Then what are you doing? Making sure you know what you're going to be putting me through. He didn't say another word as he clapped his hands together and concentrated, calling on his chakra. You know that you're going to have to call on more to make the pain happen, right? Kurama asked him. Yeah, I know. It was still going to be painful. He braced as he felt the pain coming up from his body. But even though he tried to prepare for it, it still hit him like a sledgehammer on sledgehammer steroids, carried on a tide of fire fueled by whiskey. He was faintly aware that he had fallen to the ground, mostly because all he could see now was just darkness. He was also aware that he was screaming because he could hear just enough of it in his ears. He could also hear the surprise and shock in other people's voice. In the name? The fuck did? Someone! Come! Everyone be! He tuned out the noise and focused on his breathing, trying to get it back under control. It started out ragged, but as he continued, he was able to calm it down, slowing it to a pant. The rest of his senses started to come back too. He found the strength to push himself off of the ground into a sitting position. He looked around and saw his team standing in protective positions around him. Grunt and Ruko were the closest. Grunt was ready to attack and his sister stood close to him, a biotic shield starting to form in her hands. No need for that, he told her between pants. She looked surprised and relieved to hear him speak, only to have it replaced with an indifference he knew was forced. Pity you're still with us, she remarked. He chuckled a little weakly at that comment. You say that, but I see the shield, Ruko. I know you care. She might have argued or denied once. But instead she dropped the shield and punched him in the back of the head, gently. Don't scare me like that, she told him, her voice full of concern. He nodded gratefully to her but said, I'm fine, Ruko. Grunt, stand down. You don't need to kill anyone now. Are you sure? Grunt asked him, sounding hopeful. I can still take some of them. Grunt, he said warningly. The Krogan growled but began to relax from his attack stance. So, was that good enough for you? He asked Nihilus. The Spectre just looked at him in utter surprise. What the hell was that? He demanded. He stood carefully and slowly back up. That was the inhibitors inflicting a painful sensation on me if I tried to use my chakra. I can barely use it as a result, if at all. Ashley just looked horrified, staring at him like she had just watched her favorite person being strangled in front of her. And they did this to you? She asked him, turning her Sharingan eyes onto the Huntress. That they did, he replied, looking at the Asari too. Get out of this one, bitch. I don't think she's going to, Kurama said with the same amount of satisfaction he had. She's good and buried. He's lying, the Huntress declared. Here she goes, Gyuki declared. Ashley glared harder at her. He's lying? She repeated aloud. Tell me, how exactly is he lying? She looked down at the human. I don't have to explain myself to you. Trying to use the higher-ranking card to get herself out of this one, Shikaka noted. She must be really used to it if she goes to it like it's second nature. Which only continues to show that she is an idiot, Isabu declared. I wish we had some popcorn. This is going to be great, Sun said. You don't eat, Naruto reminded the gorilla. Oh, right. You might not have to explain yourself to her, but you definitely have to explain yourself to me, Nihilus said to the Huntress. She swung her head towards him. What? You heard me. Now start talking. How is he lying? He just is, she declared stubbornly. The tribe did not put those inhibitors inside of him. Man, she can't even make that sound believable, Matatabi noted. It sounded forced and therefore fake to the Nibby's ears. She might still get out of it, Saiken said, taking note of how the other aliens were looking. The tribe soldiers remained impassive and stone-faced, but the council force behind Nihilus was split between uncertainty and clear disbelief. Perhaps something should be done? Gyuki suggested. You got anything in mind? Nothing that really comes to mind. Shikaku rolled his eyes. Then why did you open your mouth? He turned his gaze on the tanuki, and his tails lashed out angrily. Watch it, Shikaka. Wait, there is something that Naruto could use, Komiai said, breaking off the fight before it could even have a chance to begin. Kurama nodded in agreement. Yeah, you've got a point there, Komiai. Thank you, the Kabutamushi preened. The other Biju just rolled their eyes or made gagging noises. Get over yourself, the fox ordered. I just said that you had a good idea. You don't need to make it sound like you just won the keys to the universe or anything. Naruto, get to it, he ordered the Jinchuriki. Naruto opened his mouth and asked, Excuse me, can I interrupt here? All attention turned to him again, which was what he wanted. You be quiet, the Huntress ordered him. That's the second time she said that, Koko commented. Yeah, I think she's getting predictable, Isabu agreed. In the Sanbai's books, that was a good thing. Shut up, Ashley ordered the cyborg Asari. You don't get to say anything about him. You don't get to order me around, she snapped back. Her trigger finger was beginning to look really, really itchy. Naruto thought that she was desperately trying to restrain the urge to pull out her biggest gun and just lay waste to everyone and anyone there. But I do, Nihilus reminded her. She wanted to snap something at him, but he raised his gun, and his group behind him did the same thing. She fell silent and resorted to just glaring at the lot of them all. What do you have to say, Naruto? Do you remember the Hanabi Hyuga incident? He nodded. I do. It made news across the galaxy. It was also the first time your team was called the Normandy clan. Even though the situation was serious, Naruto couldn't help but groan at the name. Please don't call it that. Gaki, focus, Kurama reminded him. Whine about the name later. Right, he replied, even though he still did not like the name. Anyway, we discovered while rescuing Hanabi that matriarch Moria Axia was in charge of it all. But what we didn't know at the time was that she was a part of the tribe and that kidnapping Hanabi was their attempt to grab hold of chakra. He waited as that piece of information sank in. All eyes fell onto the huntress and her men, full of accusation. She saw the looks and began to realize what was happening. She looked at Naruto, and he just smiled back. Try and get out of this one, he silently told her. I dare you. I don't think she can, Isabu remarked. She looks too confused. The huntress raised her gun, but Ashley and Nihilus beat her to the punch. Put the weapon down, now, the Spectre told her, pointing his gun right at her organic eye. I'm putting you and your team under watch until this is all figured out. She looked at him with outrage. You cannot take his word over mine. You're a Spectre, damn it. And you are a part of an organization that has been involved in actions that were publicly deemed illegal, Ashley replied, pointing her gun right at her eye. That would be enough to shut you down for good. So you're going to believe someone who is involved with the Akatsuki? She cried out in a demanding voice. The entire yard went silent, and all eyes turned to look at Naruto. He never would have thought that she would try to use that against him, and no defense for it. The best that he could come up with was that they had been the ones who rescued him, and then dragooned him into joining their war, but that wouldn't do so well. And he knew what the rest of the galaxy thought of the Akatsuki. He had thought it long before most of them knew what the Akatsuki even were. Still, the look on Ashley's face when she turned her head towards him hurt. Is she telling the truth? She asked him. Are you going to sugarcoat it? Kurama asked him. I'm already in it deep, he replied. That's not what I asked. I asked if you're going to sugarcoat it. He really can't without making it worse, Seiken pointed out. And she's expecting it, Kokuo pointed out, looking at the huntress. She was watching their Jinchuriki with a gleeful expression, just waiting for his next move. Yes, Sun agreed. She's practically waiting for him to start digging himself into a deep hole, just like she did. Then I'm going to have to do what I always do, disappoint her, Naruto remarked. No, what you always do is make her lose some portion of her body so she can get it back via machines, Kurama reminded him. That is what you always do. He couldn't argue that point since it was true. He looked Ashley in the eyes and said, It's true. Ha! You see? The huntress crowed in triumph. You all heard him admit it. He's with the Akatsuki. Well, she's happy, Matatabi remarked. She's a little disappointed, Sun disagreed. You can see it in her eyes. Either way, she thinks that she's turned the tables, Shikaka said. Do you think Naruto should do something about that? It's his decision, Gyuki remarked. We were not the ones who kidnapped him and held him hostage for 2 years while also ensuring that he couldn't use chakra, Miranda remarked loudly from where she stood. Or not, the Hachibi amended. Guess she doesn't like getting one-upped, Kurama remarked. It seems like it, Naruto agreed with the fox. His XO looked at the huntress with a smug expression that dared her to get out of something that was already established. The Alliance soldiers turned their attention back to the tribe. Their eyes were very angry, almost shining with it. Ashley saw the same looks and lifted up her gun to the sky. She did not fire, but her finger was on the trigger. They all saw the move and promptly shut their mouths before a single word could get out. She lowered the gun and looked back at Naruto for a brief moment. She didn't say anything, the look was enough. Even though the urge to explain what exactly had been happening was strong, Naruto knew enough that at that moment was not a good time. If he spoke now, it would just make things worse. But someone had to say something, otherwise the air around them would just stretch on indefinitely into awkwardness. It just couldn't be him. Hey, are we just going to stand around like a bunch of idiots wondering the hell our dicks went, or are we going to get to the slugfest? Ruko asked in a voice that radiated how bored and annoyed she was getting. Naruto saw the look from Ashley when she glanced at Ruko and took note of her features. He didn't say anything in response to her. Instead he told Ruko, There isn't going to be a fight, Ruko. Oh come on, everyone is spoiling for one. she protested. We're not going to fight. He looked back at Ashley and Nihilus. You're welcome to come into the base and use the medical facilities to establish what I have said to be the truth. He flicked a look at the huntress. But I'm going to have to insist that she and her group are placed under watch while they're here. They will be, Nihilus told him. And so will yours once their turn for telling the story comes around. I'm sorry, what now? Shikaka asked. Well, I didn't expect any of us did, Isaba said. Well, maybe Miranda, Coco remarked. She looks quite comfortable. While his tenants were talking and debating about what had just happened, Naruto couldn't see anything he could do or say that would be able to stop the specter. So he went with it. All right, Nihilus, he told the Turian, I trust you. He kept his hands in plain sight as the Council and Alliance soldiers marched forward. They took him by the arms, even though some of the Alliance men looked ashamed to do it, and led him back into the base. Guys, don't fight them, he told his team as they were being taken into custody too. The few who had started to resist stopped at those words and his look. The machine's sound was steady, constant, and downright annoying. Okay, that damn machine is beginning to piss me off, Naruto thought to himself. He was lying on the table in the same lab he had found Urzia. It had been the only lab that had such technology to see the inhibitors, which was why both Nihilus and Ashley stood by the table and looked at the readings. You should have said something before deciding to get on the damn thing, Kurama chastised him. Hey, I wanted this over and done with. Once they see the inhibitors, they will believe my story. If I can't speak while on the table, I can endure it. When they had come to get him and brought him to the lab, he could tell by the looks on their faces that they had talked to the huntress first, and they hadn't liked what they had heard. That meant the chances of them believing him were getting better and better. You're not talking about lying on the table. You're talking about the beeping. True. He was really beginning to hate that sound. It was such a dry, dusty, monotone sound that never changed pitch or tone. It reminded him of all the times he had ended up in the hospital, and how he was forced to stay there, even when the war went on. He had hated every single moment of it, feeling like he was useless in that state. He had often tried to get out of it as soon as he could have, but they always made him stay longer than he thought necessary, going so far as strapping him to the bed. Admittedly, that was only once. It is annoying, he finally said. I know, you've said that already. I did not. In different words, maybe, but the message was the same. When the beeping finally stopped, he released a quiet sigh of relief and thought, finally. He sat up from the table and turned to face them, swinging his legs to dangle an inch off the ground. Well? He asked them. You weren't lying, Nihilus said. There are definitely pieces of nanomachinery attached to your tenketsu. However, it appears that a good number of them are broken. That's not surprising. Why? He asked. My team and I have been looking into ways to rid me of the inhibitors. We've come up with a few ways to do it, but we have to keep looking for more. Why is that? Ashley asked him, staring at him intently. If it had been anyone else, he would have thought those eyes were accusing him of something. Actually, I think she is accusing you of something, Shikaka told him as he noticed the look too. You should probably be careful around her. Gee, you think? Komiai asked in complete and utter sarcasm. Guys, focus on the conversation out here, not in there, Naruto told them, keeping his attention on Ashley. Somebody was clever enough to put in some kind of adaptation in the inhibitors. Every time we tried a method, they'd recognize it and make a defense towards it. So, we had to get a little creative at times. How did they get broken in the first place? Nihilus asked. From what these readings are telling me, they shouldn't be so easy to disable. Like I said, we had to get creative. But the first time was by accident, he admitted. Ruko slugged me hard in the stomach, and it was biotic enhanced too. The look on Ashley's face turned suspicious. Who is Ruko? You've met her outside. She was the loudmouth. The one who looks like you, she said, the suspicion becoming even more so. Yeah, her, he agreed. Why does she look like you? Ashley, Nihilus began to say warningly. But she looked him right in the eye and said, It is a legitimate concern, sir. If you just give her longer hair and remove all the tattoos, she would look like Naruto when he was used the Oiroke no Jutsu. The blonde shinobi on the table had not considered that when he looked at Ruko. He just saw her. But now, he was actually doing what Ashley had suggested and he could see it. I'll be damned. She has a point. Whoopee, Kurama said in disinterest. Nihilus thought over what she had said and considered them. She had a point. The Naruto lookalike did need to be checked out. He looked back at Naruto. Where did she come from? He asked. Are you asking where I found her or how she came to be? The shinobi asked back in a cautious voice. For now, the latter, he replied. We'll worry about how you recruited her later. Details, Naruto, now. Look, I don't know all the details. What I do know is that a group of people were trying to fuse biotics and chakra together. They decided to try and use DNA from dead people to clone them and then go from there. Apparently, my DNA turned out to be the best candidate, so they started focusing on cloning me. He looked them both in the eye. Ruko doesn't just look like me, she is me, just with biotics. Nihilus didn't say anything to that, not right away. He let those words engrave themselves into his mind before finally saying, so she's a clone. Technically speaking, yes, but I prefer to think of her as my sister. Ashley looked incredulous. Your sister? She blurted out. He didn't bat an eye. Yes, my sister. That was how she was able to break some of the inhibitors. Technically, her biotic powers were mine. Huh? She couldn't help but ask. He smiled a little at that. Trust me, I found it confusing too, Ash. Morden had to dumb it down a bit for me to get it. Who's Morden? Before he could explain, Nihilus spoke. That doesn't matter. He looked right at Naruto, his eyes flashing in accusation. You have an illegal person on your team. That's enough to get you in trouble even without you being in the Akatsuki. Anger flashed through his veins at those words and he got off the table. First off, he told the Spectre, taking a threatening step to him, she's not responsible for how she was created. You can't blame her for existing. Second, you make it sound like I joined the Akatsuki willingly. It sure seems like it, Ashley told him accusingly. I didn't have a choice in the matter. They busted me out of the lab where I was being held and took me away before I had a chance to contact anyone I knew. Why didn't you just escape then when you did have a chance? Naruto couldn't believe it, and he knew that it showed on his face. Ash, do you really think that they would have given me a chance to run away? You're Naruto Uzumaki. He had to restrain himself from sighing in resignation. Why does everyone seem to think that's an excuse? He asked himself. He waited for a beat to hear a sarcastic comment from his tenants, but none came. I kept going to planets that I've not been on before, Ash. I might be a shinobi, but even that has limits. Besides, I was more focused on getting back at the tribe for keeping me locked up like a fucking lab rat. She started to speak again, but Nihilus stopped her with a look. This won't help, he told her sternly. He looked over at the blonde. We'll be going over the testaments of your team to hear their side of this little war between the tribe and the Akatsuki. Why? He asked, a little confused at the prospect. Because I want to make sure that we have everything right before taking this to the courts. The courts? Thought the shinobi. Why would he be going to the courts with what's going on? Are you planning to sue the tribe for something? He asked. Kurama groaned and restrained the urge to cover his eyes with his hands. Gaki! He snapped out in irritation. What? His Jinchuriki demanded. I wasn't being sarcastic. No, Naruto, I'm not going to be suing the tribe, Nihilus told him. But I will be bringing both it and the Akatsuki up on charges. He couldn't have cared less if that was the Turian's plan. It would have been a load off his back if the Akatsuki did get brought to light for what they were doing. There was just one problem that he saw with the whole thing. The tribe is council-sanctioned. I doubt that they're going to let you bring the one group who's gotten their hands on chakra to court. It wouldn't be the first time some of their dirty laundry was aired. It might be the first that dealt with a power that could rival biotics, he pointed out. Nihilus looked him determinedly. It doesn't matter in the end. The council broke the laws that they had agreed to when the Systems Alliance joined. They will have to answer for what they've done. The shinobi couldn't even hide the look of disbelief on his face at those words. Tell me that you're not that naive, Nihilus. I know you're not. If you know that, why do you ask? You can't seriously believe that's what's going to happen if you bring this entire thing to court? He had a feeling that some kind of get-out would be arranged, and the tribe would be left with relatively minor damage. He had seen enough people slip through the laws during the war, getting away with what they did because they had planned ahead. It had been absolutely infuriating to see them walk away with a victoriously smug smirk, but they were always a secondary concern. No, it's my hope, the Turian told him. He was no naive little greenhorn who thought that the galaxy was supposed to punish the bad guys. He knew full well that the tribe was probably get off while the Akatsuki would crash and burn. But he could and would hope that it would get more than a slap on the wrist from what they did. And if the council didn't do it, the public media certainly will. Naruto became relieved. He now knew that both of them knew that the trial probably wouldn't go the way the Turian wanted, but he would still go through with it. All he could do now was help in any way he could. When you talk to Grunt, you should probably have me there, he told them both. Grunt? Repeated Ashley. The Krogan, he explained. If I'm there, he's less likely to kill you. Noted, Nihilus said. The Spectre wasn't concerned, having handled Krogan before. In the meantime, you will wait in your holding cell. As he activated his comm and started talking to the people on the other side, Naruto waited. The blonde wasn't surprised that there were holding cells in the base. It was probably because this was one of the places they had been planning to stash and hold him while he was still under, but that was just a guess. His eyes fell onto his weapons resting on a nearby table. When he started going for them, he heard a gun move. What do you think you're doing? Ashley asked him. Getting my weapons, he answered. But all it took was one look from her to know that wasn't going to happen. Naruto, began Komi. I know, he replied before the Nanabai could actually say anything. The Biju was a little offended by that. You know what? That she's not going to let me get my weapons. Oh, he said, deflating. Okay. Shikaku couldn't help but roll his eyes at the whole situation. Really, did you not think that he wouldn't have been able to figure it out? He does have a brain in his head. Not one word out of you about my childhood, furball, the blonde warned the fox before he could actually say anything. Pity, Kurama said without an ounce of disappointment. And here I had one that used the track record method. Ashley continued to give him that hard look. Do you really think that would happen? He really didn't, but he couldn't say that out loud. One could hope, right? It just made her scowl harder. No, you couldn't. You're under arrest, Naruto. That doesn't mean you get to keep your weapons. They'll be put in the armory, Nihilus informed him. We'll keep them there until we move off-planet and head for the Citadel. He reached out and placed a firm hand on the shinobi's shoulder. Now move. As he lay in his cell bed, staring up at the ceiling, Naruto found himself relaxing and then dozing off. As his eyes finally closed, it felt like he had opened them again and found himself in a whole new place. Only that was the truth. Just from the hazy and fuzzy horizon he knew that he was in one of his visions/dreams. After an initial thought of just what I need right now, he started looking about and taking in the details that he could. He was looking at a path that might have been carved into a large mountain, if the path wasn't half buried in snow and getting more buried by the second from the snowstorm howling all around. While one side of the path was the mountain itself, the other side was just open air, which was where he was. Once he realized that, he looked down and saw just how far up he was. It took him a moment to realize that he couldn't see the ground. We're really far up, aren't we? Yep, we are, Gyuki agreed, not seeing the problem of it. He had spent most of his time inside a Jinchuriki inn and around the land of lightning. Tall mountains didn't bother him all that much now. What's with this wee stuff? Sun asked, also uncaring about where the blonde stood, or lack of. Just go with it. In any case, does anyone know where we are? Matatabi asked. She tried looking around, but all she could see was snow, and a lot of snow. There was some stone and some rock, but that was overwhelmed by the snow. I guess that we're still on the mountain, Naruto told her, taking the chance to look up. He couldn't see the peak. It was all shrouded in gray clouds thick as a blanket. It could have been a mile higher up or 100 miles. Normally, one of his tenants would have asked him how he had known that. But that was proven moot by the fact that Sakura quickly came into view. Naruto's old teammate was struggling up the path, climbing over piles of snow that were bigger than her, trying to avoid any patches of ice, and shielding herself against the wind. But he could see that she was weakening and slowing down. What the hell is she doing? Shikaka demanded. She looks half dead on her feet. Didn't she say that she would climb the mountain the last time we saw her? Koko asked. Yeah, she did, Naruto acknowledged, unable to take his gaze off of her. Kurama was still looking around the place when he saw someone else standing in the air. At first the fox thought that it was just his imagination, but after taking the moment to blink, he still saw that person. Naruto, to your right, he ordered. He knew that tone of voice well enough to do as he was told the first time. He looked and saw the same thing the fox had, a young girl floating in the air just like he was. She couldn't have been any older than 15. The headband worn around her neck was shiny and bright without any nicks or scratches. Her hair was black, just like Sasuke's, but there were also streaks of pink in it too. He could tell by how evenly spaced they were that they were artificial. But even without the streaks, one look at her green eyes told him who she was. Mikoto Uchiha, he spoke aloud. She turned her head to look at him, his eyes becoming quizzical. You are Mikoto Uchiha, right? She opened her mouth but no words came out. That's odd, Isabu remarked. It's like she can hear you but can't talk back. Can she hear him? Saiken asked. I guess. You might want to try that out, Matatabi told Naruto. He knew that well enough. He also would have said something in reply that had a sarcastic bite to it, but he didn't that time. He kept his attention on the apparition. You can hear me, right? He asked her. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. Finally, she closed it and with a slight frown, nodded in acknowledgement. Well, she can hear you, so that's a good thing, Gyuki said. Kurama had a different viewpoint. She can't speak to us. That makes finding out what she's doing here a lot more difficult. There's one way to find out, Naruto said mentally. And what would that be? Asking her questions, he answered. Of course, the fox drawled with a slight emphasis of sarcasm. How could I forget such a method? He ignored the fox for the girl. Do you know who I am? Why are you concerned about your ego at a time like this? I'm not. I'm trying to see if she knows me. Like I said, the Kyuubi said with a roll of his eyes. It's not like that. If she knows me, she might be able to relax a little. I mean, just look at her, she's completely stiff. He's right, Komi agreed, seeing the same thing the shinobi saw. Naruto looked at the girl again and asked, Do you know who I am? She looked confused and tilted her head. She frowned momentarily before putting her fingers beneath her eyes and shook her head. I think she just said that she's never seen you, Isabu supplied. Yeah, that's what I thought too, he agreed. So he went with a different method. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. As soon as she heard the name, she lost the frown and lit up with a smile. She nodded enthusiastically, pointing to her ear. She has heard of you. I figured that out. Isabu, let him do it, Koko said. Just trying to help, the turtle protested defensively. I know and thanks, Naruto assured him. Why are you here? He asked Mikoto. She lost the happy look on her face, and it was replaced with a sad one. She pointed back to Sakura, who was still struggling up the path, and then back to her eyes. You're watching her? She nodded once. Why is she watching her mother? Matatabi asked. I think the better question is how long has she been watching her mother? Gyuki replied. I don't remember seeing her around in any of the previous dreams. Maybe she was there, and we just didn't see her. Sun offered. What, like she's some kind of ghost? Asked Naruto. There was an involuntarily shudder down his spine at the mention of ghosts. Don't start on us now, Kurama warned him, noticing the shudder. I wasn't going to. It was just a reflex. He heard the sound of a boot slipping against ice the wrong way and Sakura's surprised shit. He turned back to the path and saw she was lying against the mountain wall. She lay there, not moving. He was afraid that she was dead, but when he saw her breathing, he relaxed a little. He turned his attention back to Mikoto. She looked at her mother with sadness in her eyes that he felt in his heart. Can you talk to her? He asked her. She shrugged her shoulders. Have you tried? She shook her head. You should try. She looked at him with a confused expression at the same time the Ichibi in his head said, Say what again? He ignored the tanuki in favor for the ghost of the dead girl. Go over and talk to her. She's suffering, he told her. Her confusion turned into one of uncertainty. She looked back at her mother and then at him, lifting her hands up as she shrugged. She's doing this, been all through that, for you, he told her. I can't, a voice whispered in the air. They both whipped their heads to where it came from. It came from the path, from Sakura. She was just sitting there, shaking violently. Her face was streaked with tears that were freezing in the cold wind. I can't do this. What's the point? Oh hell, she's losing the will, Naruto thought in a panic. He tried calling out to her. Sakura. But his voice was only heard by him and the ghost beside him. What was I thinking, trying to do this? She asked herself, sounding both sad and bitter. What would I have found at the top of this damn mountain? Nothing, she declared. I would have found nothing. I'm pathetic. The tears came harder, and she began to cry. I can't go home and I've got nothing here. Sakura! He called out again. But she still didn't hear him. Damn it all! So, what are you going to do now? Kurama asked him. He didn't answer. His only focus was on getting to her. Without thinking about it, he started walking through the air to the mountain. His feet felt heavy, but he kept going. I'm pathetic, he heard Sakura say to herself, still crying. If the others could see me now, they would laugh at me, if they bothered to look at me. What have I done with myself? He reached the path and stood before her. Sakura, get up, he told her. I'm a failure. Get up. I'm worthless. After all that I've done, I'm completely worthless. I said get up. He shouted at her. But she still didn't hear him. I should just stay here and die. That's right. I should do that. A bitter laugh echoed from her throat. Who would miss me anyway? Naruto could see that she was losing it. If he didn't do something to get her out of this funk, she would probably let herself die. He had stopped her once in these dreams. He had to do it again. But how would he do it when she couldn't hear him? I have to get her attention. And how do you plan on doing that? The fox asked him. He knew the answer and also knew if this was the real world, he would get punched into the air hard. But he saw no other alternative. He squatted down to her level and slapped her hard across the cheek. Her face rocked with the blow, and she fell back down into the snow. He stood back up and waited. She lurched out of the snow, her fists raised and ready to throw. Who? She started to demand. Her eyes looked around, trying to find her attacker. But then they saw him. First, they narrowed in confusion. Then they widened in surprised realization. Naruto? She asked, barely whispering his name. He held out his hand. Get up. She took his hand, and as her skin touched his, the world came into startling clarity again. He could feel the weight and strength of his teammate in her hand as he pulled her back up onto her feet. She looked him over and was still surprised. You haven't changed, she said. It's been so long, and you haven't changed a bit. She looked like she wanted to say more, but Naruto cut her off. What are you doing, Sakura? You're not a quitter. You don't give up. You have never given up. Why the hell are you starting now? She laughed bitterly at that. Look at where I am. On a mountain in the freezing cold in a foreign land, talking to what appears to be an apparition of a teammate I haven't seen in the longest time. I've not been in Konoha for the better part of a decade, and I don't think I'll be able to go back. My life is an absolute wreck. Having seen her life when it started going downhill, he knew full well that she was right. But there was a reason for that happening, a reason that she had to acknowledge. Yeah, you're a wreck, he agreed. But that's because you held a nation responsible for what a group did. She jerked her head up to look at him. How dare you? You don't know what they've done to me. You let a child die, Sakura. He shouted, overriding her protest. You let a child die because of where he was born. You held your eldest daughter in contempt because of who she chose to love and marry. That's what you've gotten because of your vendetta. Her eyes went wide with shock and surprise. How could you have? But he wasn't done yet. It has to end, Sakura. You have to let it go. She stared at him, her surprise transforming into a look that was both bitter and miserable. I can't. Yes, you can. She shook her head. I can't. It's what I've lived with ever since the war ended. I don't know how to give it up. She looked down at the path. I know it's destroyed my life, but I don't know to leave it behind me. I want to hate and blame the Midgardians for what happened to my girl. I have to blame them for what happened. He looked at her quivering form, pity and sadness raging through him. He turned his head slightly and saw that Mikoto was still there. An idea came to mind. What would Mikoto think if she saw you like this? He asked Sakura over the howling winds. She didn't look him in the eye. She's dead. I wish she wasn't, but she is. A new voice, younger than either of them, spoke. Mom. Naruto felt a hand on his side, and when he looked, he saw that it was Mikoto's. She stood there, looking at her mother with sad eyes. Sakura lifted her head and looked at her daughter with shocked eyes. Me, Mikoto? She asked, her voice a hopeful whisper. Is that you, baby girl? Her daughter winkled her nose at the name. Please stop calling me that, Mom. I'm not two anymore. The way she said it meant that she had said it many times before. Sakura began weeping afresh. "Oh Kami, it is you, Mikoto. You're here. You're actually here." She lost the annoyed look. "Mom, why are you still doing this? You have to stop. They killed you, Mikoto. They butchered you like animal for slaughter." "I know. But it's been so long now. Why do you keep going? What else can I do?" she asked. Her daughter replied, "Forgive them. Forgive them and continue with your life. You know that I would have done that if they had killed you." Sakura wanted to protest or argue, but before she could even speak the words, they stopped. Her head fell once more and she said, "It's my fault. All of this, it's my fault. I was the one who urged you to become the next slug sage. It's not just your fault, Mom. I wanted to be the next slug sage. I wanted to be just like you. And you're dead because I encouraged that. There's nothing I can do that can fix it, and I've only made it worse since." Mikoto shook her head. "No, you can fix it, just a little bit. Go home. Go back to everyone and say you're sorry for driving them away. Let your hatred pass on. I don't know if I can. After all I've done." At this point, Naruto probably would have gotten exasperated by all of this, but Mikoto wasn't. She was still going strong. "You have to, Mom. I know it hurts, but you have to let it go. Everyone won't take you back if you don't give it up." "How?" she asked her daughter. "How do I do that?" "Just go one day at a time. Isn't that what you told me when I started learning chakra?" It must have been true because Sakura started hiccuping out a laugh and a smile was struggling to come onto her crying face. "I miss you, Mikoto. I miss you so much it hurts." Mikoto left Naruto's side and gave her mother a tight hug. "I know. But I never left you, Mom. You know that I'm still with you." She broke the hug and stepped back off the path, disappearing into the air. "Damn, that's one hell of a trick," Komi said, completely impressed. "Somehow, I get the feeling that it wasn't a trick," Naruto replied. "If it was a trick, he probably should have been able to still see her." "Mikoto?" called out Sakura, looking around for her daughter. "She's still with you, Sakura," he told his old teammate. "You've climbed the mountain to figure that out. You don't need to climb any higher." "Then what should I do?" she asked him, her eyes and voice begging for an answer. "Do what she told you, turn around, go back down the mountain, and go home. You know that everyone is waiting for you." He took her shoulder and urged her to turn around and face where she had come. She looked at the path. He didn't need to look at her face to see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked him. All he did was give her a firm but also gentle push. She took the step and he pulled his hand away. "Go," he told her, his voice becoming a whisper in the winds. He stepped back away from her, going back and back until he was in the air again. She looked back. "Naruto?" she asked, looking for him. But like her daughter, she didn't see him. She kept looking for a couple of more seconds but quickly stopped. She looked back to the path, squared her shoulders, and started walking back down. He watched her go in silence, fairly certain that if it had not been winter and not in the middle of a blizzard, she would have started running down the path. Suddenly, Shikaku started to snigger, which quickly turned into laughter. "What's so funny?" Naruto asked him. "I just realized something. You had just fulfilled that whole dead mentor coming back as a ghost bit in a typical fantasy story." He burst out into gales of laughter as soon as he said it. "No, I..." He started to protest, but stopped when he realized that he actually had. "Well, shit. Awooga. 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 What the fucking hell is with these damn alarms?" thought Naruto angrily as he woke up. It seemed like they lived just to make his sleeping miserable. Did the people who did the security installations put those alarms just for that reason? "It's annoying, I'll grant you," Isaba told him. "But not everything is about you, Naruto." "Yeah, let's focus on the more important question here," Gyuki said, like for instance, why are they going off in the first place? "Hey, what the fuck is going on?" shouted Ruko from outside his cell. "See? That's the important question right there." "I get it. I get it." He went to the cell's screen and rapped on it, trying to get the attention of the guard standing close to a large computer console. Since he was the closest to said guard, it should have been easy to do so. But the Asari didn't look his way. So he kept on pounding and pounding until she finally turned around and looked at him. "What?" she demanded irritably. "What's going on? Why is the alarm going off? I don't know, she said uncaringly. The alarm is going off, and you have no clue why, he demanded. I didn't say why, she said, still not really looking at him. I said I didn't care. Are you fucking stupid? Ruko demanded. Despite the vulgarity of her words, Miranda added, sounding close to her, I find myself agreeing with her. There was a paused silence that followed afterwards. Isn't there supposed to be a fuck you cheerleader flying through the air right now? Saiken asked. Yeah, there should be, Sun agreed. Naruto knew why they thought that but moved past it. It's not happening, so let's not worry about it, HM? He asked them as he kept looking at the guard. Are you going to tell us what's going on, or are you just going to stand there like an idiot? She finally looked at him, the disdain barely hiding in her eyes as she stared down her nose. I'm not the one who's locked in a jail cell right now, am I? We weren't talking about my being in a cell. We're talking about your IQ, which I think is a little on the low side. Now would you just tell what the hell is going on? Since you were rude about it, no, she declared. She sniffed her nose derisively and looked away. You know, just by that move alone, she just showed she's from a high-class family, Saiken remarked. The slug had seen so many rich and powerful people pull the same move on people they thought were beneath them. Yeah, and there is always one truth that sticks with them, Shikaku said back. Naruto knew what the tanuki was thinking and agreed with it. They're so arrogant they can't see what's right underneath their noses. He looked past her into the corridor. Okay, this is getting us nowhere. Kasumi, would you mind helping us out here? The guard barely turned her head. What? That was as far as she got before a thunking sound echoed in the air, and she fell to the ground with her eyes rolling up into her lids. Quite the bitch, wasn't she? Kasumi remarked as she appeared over the fallen guard. She walked up to Naruto's cell. She looked a little put out. I was so sure that no one could see me or that I was here. How did you? He looked right back at her. You moved the pad thing on the console an inch when she was looking at me. You did it on purpose to get my attention. She lost the look and grinned without shame. Guilty as charged. And you used to miss all the little details, Kurama said in a phone-nostalgic voice. Hush you, he told the fox. So, are you going to let us out here or what? The thief looked the cell's door, a screen of thick glass that could not be broken by even a chakra-enhanced punch. Oh, I don't know. You guys look like you're having a good time. Just get us out of here already, woman. Zaid all but bellowed a few cells down from where Naruto was. The blonde glanced the merc's way and then looked at her. You heard the guy. All right, give me a moment. She walked back over to the console, stepping over the guard, and giving her a none-too-gentle kick as she went to work. A few seconds later the glass retracted upwards and Naruto stepped out of the cell. The first thing his eyes fell on was the massive locker in the back of the room. It was big black, and he was certain that the weapons were in there. He was right. Everyone, load up, he ordered as he heard the other cells open, holstering his guns. He looked at Sasuke's Chikuto for a long moment. Then he grabbed it and attached it to the backside of his armor. He went back to the console. Can this thing get me in contact with Nihilus? He asked Kasumi. She shrugged. Probably, she told him, but why would you want to contact him? I need to find out what's going. That's a little stupid. I say that we bail out now so we can get a head start. Kasumi, just put me through to Nihilus. Miranda came up to them both, walking at a quick pace. Commander, I have to agree with Ms. Goto. Getting in contact with the Spectre is a bad idea. We've done what we came for. We should get out. He glanced back at her. If we go out there without knowing what's going on, we're going to end up getting killed. I would rather avoid that. He turned his attention back to Kasumi. Get in contact with him. Miranda stepped forward before Kasumi could put a hand on the console. I'll take care of it. What, you don't have faith in me? Kasumi asked, sounding hurt but looking amused at the same time. She ignored the thief. Her fingers tapped against the keyboards and entered what was needed. One of the screens above the console came alight, and Nihilus's face appeared. Who is this? The Turian demanded instantly. Nihilus, Naruto said, making sure that he was the only he could see. Naruto, how the hell are you out of your cell? That's not important. What's going on? We're under attack. That was obvious, but he needed to know the details. By whom? We're not sure at this moment. But it's not a concern for you. We're under attack. How could it not be? He asked, still hearing the wail of the alarms. Look, just stay there. I'll send a group over to you to make sure that you stay safe. Just stay point for now. Fuck that shit, Ruko said as she came up to the console and stood by Miranda. Neither woman said anything to the other, but neither did they flinch away from one another like they were poison. Nyla scowled, sensing where the conversation was going. Don't even think about trying to get out of here. Remember, you're needed to help bring the tribe to the justice they deserve. I didn't say anything about trying to leave, Nihilus, Naruto told him. You might not have said anything, but I know that you're thinking about it. Just stay there and don't move. He turned to the side and fell silent. They could hear a voice speaking to him, but it was too far away and tinny to make out. Are you sure? He asked. The voice spoke again and he frowned. Damn it. That can't be good, Komiai commented. What tipped you off? Naruto asked him back with no small amount of sarcasm. No need to get snippy. Focus on what's going on. Nihilus, what's happening? One of my men reported in. The entire Alliance force is down. He also said that we're being attacked by collectors. Collectors? He repeated. The specter on the screen had made it sound like it was a title of something rather than just a word. He heard Miranda bite back a breath and looked over at her. She looked surprised. What are the collectors? We need to go, she said. You're not going anywhere, Nihilus declared. That's not your decision anymore, Spectre. If the collectors are here, then we need to get out before they find us. If they do, we're done for. Don't be so arrogant to think the collectors focus on you and your race. They hunt us. And they hunt him far more intensely, she declared, pointing the finger at Naruto. We're getting out of here. What's going on? Naruto thought, stopping himself from whipping his head back and forth to look at them both. They were talking about the collectors like he was supposed to know who they were. He didn't, and yet, there was an odd feeling like the words had some kind of meaning to him once. Stay put, Nihilus said. That's an order. We're not under your authority, Miranda retorted. We are not obliged to obey your commands or even listen to what you have to say. You are my prisoners. Since when? Demanded Ruko, insulted that he would whip out that. I would have remembered being arrested, and I don't remember that happening today. She is right. You did not arrest us at any point in time. We were simply brought in for questioning and placed under guard. Be that as it may, Nihilus started to say. We're going, Miranda cut him off, already reaching for the console. Look, that was as far as he got before the screen suddenly went dark. Whoops, must have lost him, Ruko said with dry sarcasm. She looked at her brother. Can we go now or what? We're going, he replied. Gurus, get Joker on the horn and have him send the shuttle down. You got it, Gurus replied, already reaching for his calm. Don't you usually call the ship? Ruko asked him. She had seen him do it plenty of times to think it was weird for anyone to do it. He ignored her in favor for Kasumi. You got a way out of here? He asked. Not through the tunnel, Zaid said instantly. Not through the tunnel? Of course I do, Kasumi told him. She didn't sound offended or any kind of variation of the word. She was serious. Good, lead the way. Gurus, he called out, have the shuttle lock onto us and wait until we're close to the pickup point to come down. On it, the Turian called back. As Kasumi led them out of the cell block, Naruto brought Miranda in closer. You and I are going to have a talk, he told her in a voice that was barely audible. About? She asked, going to the same level of voice without missing a beat. She didn't even sound surprised. The collectors, he told her. Who are they, what do they want, and do they seem to be after me? In that order specifically? He wasn't sure if she was being sarcastic or serious. Given the time crunch they were now finding themselves in, he went with serious and skipped over the rest. Just tell me, Miranda, he ordered as he stepped through the door leading out to the complex. We don't know what the collectors are, and we only know that they come from beyond the Omega-4 relay. They've been known to offer trades for technology advanced enough to garner attention in the Terminus system in exchange for odd requests. However, recently, they seem to go after humans more and more often. They're more focused on taking those with biotics powers than anyone else. Then why are they coming after me, supposedly? There is no supposedly, Commander. They are coming after you. Why? Most likely for the same reason the tribe had you. Out of all the chakra-wielding humans in the galaxy, you stand paramount over them all. Getting you would be akin to winning the ultimate jackpot. Hey, look at that, you're a lottery number, Kurama said brightly. That was in bad taste, Kurama, Shikaku told the fox, frowning as he spoke. And that's saying something, coming from him, Sun added. The Tanuki might have protested, if it wasn't true. Naruto said to Miranda, so they're after me, add another group to the list. He said it flippantly, something that he hadn't really done since he was a teenager, and before the war. But with all that was going on, it felt like it was needed. Sir, it's more than that, she told him. Kasumi stopped and held out a hand for the others to stop too. After a silent moment as she checked around the corner, she dropped the hand and they kept moving. How is it different? I've already got the Akatsuki and the tribe coming after me. Commander, the Akatsuki was not trying to catch you after the Normandy was destroyed, she told him. He replied, clearly not believing her. She skipped past the argument that could have and would have come from that. It was the collectors that destroyed the Normandy. If things had not been so serious and they were not trying to get out so quickly, he would have stopped right then and there to look at her. While he didn't do that, he did look her right in the eyes. The Normandy was destroyed by the tribe. Did you actually see the tribe destroy the ship, sir? I was there. Not the same thing, she told him. I asked if you saw the tribe's ship destroy the Normandy with your own eyes. No. The last thing he remembered was using the Gyakukuchios no Jutsu, reverse summoning jutsu, to escape the ship. She knew that. He was the one who told her. They went down a corridor that looked untouched by either their break-in or the attack happening. The Akatsuki were able to track down the tribe's ship that ambushed the Normandy and access their records. They had landed the Normandy, but that was it. Then what did they do? Fell back when the collector's ship came into view. That was who destroyed the Normandy. If the two of you are done talking? Asked Kasumi them both as she came to a stop, making the other stop too. What's up? Ruko asked right behind Miranda. She saw that they were before a door and wondered why they weren't going through it. This is the way out. So why aren't we going through it? Listen. All I hear are the fucking alarms, she said drily as the alarms continued to wail off all around them. Listen beyond them, the thief told her just as drily. The biotic did as she was told and listened beyond the alarms. She eventually heard what she was hearing. Beyond the door were the sounds of a battle. Multiple guns were firing off and the thrumming of biotic's powers being used. Oddly enough, she didn't hear sounds of jutsu being used. We're about to step out into a fight, Naruto remarked, his hands already going for his guns. Is this the only way out? It is if we want to get off this rock ASAP, she replied. We? Repeated Miranda. At this point, I think it's safe to say that I'm going with you. Don't get too bent out of shape about it, okay? Fine, she said, turning her gaze away from the thief and over to the Solarian. Morden? She asked. He nodded. Have vaccine. Made last adjustments before coming down to planet. How much do you have? Enough for everyone but only for roughly 10 minutes, he answered, reaching into the pack at his side. Even brought spare for safety reasons. Turned out well, he remarked as he glanced over at Kasumi. What vaccine? Naruto asked, looking at the Solarian in confusion. He never heard of any mention of a vaccine before now. Miranda came to lab soon after pickup from Omega, the scientist began to explain. Asked me to create vaccine against collector-seeker swarms but told me secondary concern to breaking chakra inhibitors. Must say, most challenging work those two goals. Most enjoyable, he declared with a slight smile. What's a seeker swarm? We think it's how the collectors are taking away humans from colonies without any kind of fight, Miranda told him. With any luck, this should protect us from them while we're out in the open. He looked her in the eyes, feeling very annoyed and angry. Why wasn't I told about this? It wasn't your concern, Commander. You had to stay on point and focus on the tribe. That's not your call. It wasn't yours either, sir. It was the elusive man's. That man and I need to have a talk soon, he thought to himself. This was getting way too out of hand. She ignored him in favor of Morden. The Solarian nodded at her silent request and started handing out vials from his bag to the team. Take quickly, not much time, he told them all. Naruto took the vial from him and looked over it. It seemed such a small thing, almost fragile in his hand. So, am I supposed to drink this or inject it? He asked. Either way can be utilized. Bottoms up then, he thought, taking the vial and throwing it back like a pro. He shuddered as the stuff went down his gullet. You tastes like moldy sand. How would you know how that tastes? Ruko asked him. She drank it too, and she had to admit, the description was apt. You don't want to know. That was a day he, Gaara, and B didn't like to think about. He waited for everyone else to take the vaccine in their own way. Then he tapped Kasumi on the shoulder. Ready when you are. Then let's get this show on the road. He reached back and activated his helmet. She stepped to the door and it opened, the light briefly blinding everyone there. When it passed and they stepped outside, they saw the fight going on. It was a three-way battle between the council forces, the tribe, apparently, they had gotten out too, and a group of creatures that looked like bugs standing on two legs, wearing armor that looked like an exoskeleton, and holding guns. Their heads were domed in the back and curved downwards, allowing the four eyes in the front to be seen visibly. The eyes themselves were unsettling. They had a yellow glow to them that almost seemed angry with madness. To Naruto, they also looked a little familiar, like he had seen them before. After looking at the creatures, he paid attention to the battlefield again. He saw alliance soldiers alongside the council forces, but they were frozen in place with some kind of bugs on them. Those must be the Seeker Swarm, he thought to himself. Stick to the side and move quickly, Kasumi told them all. The way out is behind the collectors. Of course it is, Gurus remarked. Why would it be easy? If it was easy, we wouldn't do it, Musashi told him. Just move, Eric said, ending the conversation. They stepped outside and immediately plastered themselves against the wall. They moved quickly to the right, staying close to the wall and making sure that they were not in sight of the fight. There was a small grove of trees that they went to for cover. There they kept going for the door on the other side of the yard. They took note of how the fight was going. The collectors stood tall and strong, facing their opponents confidently. Both the council and the tribe forces were hiding behind any kind barrier they could find, a large rock, some kind of low wall, or rubble large and thick enough to serve as a shield. The target! One of the tribe soldiers shouted, looking at the grove and the armored shinobi moving through it. It's the target! All three groups stopped the fighting for a brief second to take a look at the grove. Well, shit, Naruto thought to himself in that one moment. I guess it's safe to say the jig is up, Kurama told him. Yeah, now we need to run. Then why aren't you? Move it, people! He shouted to his team, breaking out into a run that got him out of the grove in under a minute. His team was right behind him. Once the moment was over, the fight started up again, but with a completely different objective. Get the target and secure him. A tribe officer ordered his soldiers. The huntress needs him alive. They all turned their guns onto the team and started shooting. Orders from the Spectre. A Solarian soldier with the council force told the others. Prevent them from being taken or letting them get away. Naruto wasn't sure if that meant if they were going to shoot at them like the tribe was or not. As it turned out, they paid more attention to the tribe. But their inexperience was showing, not in a good way. The collectors, on the other hand, had their attention completely focused on Naruto's team, or more specifically, on Naruto himself. One of them suddenly lurched forward and slouched downwards, like it was readying itself to throw up. A voice spoke from it, something that sounded cold and demonic. Assuming Ko, Naruto immediately put 2 bullets in it. The body fell to the ground. The collectors looked at it, and then at him. So did his team. What? It didn't sound like a good thing, he said in explanation. Gurus looked past him at the collectors coming out of their surprise and beginning to raise their weapons again. Perhaps we should be more focused on them? He suggested loudly, raising his rifle to take aim. Good idea, the blonde agreed. He looked briefly at the others and said, hit and run tactics, people. We do not stop moving. He took off. The others followed. He angled his path so that it would go around the collectors and reach the door. That way he wouldn't have to fight his way through them to reach it, just take shots to ward them off. The others followed his example, never stopping to take a proper shot. It also helped that the way they running put the collectors right between them and the tribe. When the tribe finally did notice what they were doing, there was already a wall of strange insect-like creatures standing between them. That didn't stop them from opening fire with both guns and biotics, of course, but they still had to get through the collectors. They would have to deal with the target group later, if they could reach them at all. Quite frankly, they needed support and they needed it now. Naruto, for his part, kept his focus on the exit. He let the bullets hit his armor, trusting it and the shields to hold. If any collector tried to physically stop him, he took it down easily, gave it a bullet from his gun, and kept on moving. He did pay attention to any who suddenly looked like they were having a seizure or were heard speaking those words. He killed them before they had a chance to finish, and his team soon caught on and did the same. "We've got support incoming," one of the council soldier, a Turian, most likely the designated radio man, shouted in obvious relief. "Captain Williams has finished up her section of fighting. She's sending her group to us and will join us soon after. We just need to hold on." "Hot damn, and praise the goddess!" an Asari crowed in cheer. That cheer quickly turned to a pain scream when she got shot through the arm. "That's not good news," Isaba said. "You should run, Naruto." "Already doing that," he replied, ducking under the swing of a collector's arm, and then bashing one of its eyes out with his gun, firing off a bullet too. They were close to the door now and were still moving. Once they were through the door, they would be close to getting away. "Oh shit!" Ruko swore suddenly. "What?" he demanded, keeping his focus on what lay ahead of him. "We've got company." "I know that already." They were surrounded by company that was trying to capture them, stop them, or just kill them. Now wasn't the time for pointing out the fucking obvious. "No, we've got more company," she told him before releasing a charge of biotics at the collectors, knocking them down like bowling pins. She felt a little proud at that sight. Before her training with Samara, she would have just sent them flying. Now they were falling to the ground and taking others with them. "What are you talking about?" "Look up, dumbass." He did, and saw a ship coming down through the atmosphere fast, right towards them. It didn't look like any kind of ship he had seen before. Granted, that wasn't a big number, but from the looks on the council and tribe forces told him that they hadn't seen it before either. Which mean only one thing: the collectors were getting reinforcements. They couldn't stay and fight a pitched battle, they wouldn't last. There was also no way to take down the ship quick enough. So they were still left with the only option they had. "Run!" he roared, putting new energy into his feet. There wasn't time to go around now, they get to go through. And there was one way to do that. "Grunt, take point and charge," he ordered. "Right," replied Grunt in great satisfaction. "Oh fuck, get clear!" Zaid warned everyone. Naruto stepped to the side just in time to see his Krogan student ram right into the collector in front of them, knock him down, and keep going. He and the rest followed, doing quick mop-ups as they went. He wasn't sure how long it took to reach the door, but he did know that they had waded through a lot of collectors to reach it while also fending off the tribe with wild shots. It all sort of blurred together, something that he was familiar with. All he could do was to follow his student and make sure they reached the door. It was when they finally reached the door that someone shouted, "Look!" Naruto wasn't sure who had said it. He wouldn't have even stopped to look in the first place, if he hadn't heard an old familiar thrum of energy. That can't be. He looked to see but missed it. All he saw was the collector's ship exploding in the air, the debris already beginning to fall. "Grenades!" Someone behind him shouted. It sounded like it was Quan Misley. Then he was suddenly being pushed forward to the door hard by hands behind him. He didn't fight against them, instead letting them guide to the door and through it. He could hear the explosions going off behind him and even some biotic powers being used, most likely as a shield or to send them back. He went through the door and turned to guide the others through. Come on, he shouted. As the last person came through the door, it started to close. A grenade flew through and landed on the floor. "Shit!" he heard Miranda swear. He heard the sound of a biotic gathering but also heard someone kicking the grenade back through the door. It must have gone through because the light from the explosion and the explosion itself were much farther away than it should have been. Either way, the shockwave was enough to make him and the others stumble. His ears were ringing as he got his balance back into order. He heard someone moaning quietly in pain and someone else trying to keep the pain in. "Cheerleader!" Ruko shouted, somewhere off in the distance. He looked back and pushed through some of the others. At the back of the team, both Miranda and Quan Misley were on the ground, and Quan Misley was clearly the more damaged of the two. She lay against the wall, the front of her armor blackened and burned from the explosion. Her eyes were closed, and she wasn't moving. Miranda's eyes were open and her hands were clasped around a large gash in her side, blood leaking out between her fingers. Ruko was by her side, looking down at her with unguarded worry. "What happened?" he demanded. Miranda looked up at him. She kicked the grenade away, back through the door. But it went off just as it went through. She caught the explosion full on, even though she tried to shield herself. He looked back down at the hunter, and worry washed over him once more. He didn't need someone to tell him that she needed medical aid right away. They had to move. Get her up onto her feet and carry her, he ordered Eric and Musashi. Ruko, do the same for Miranda. She started to protest. I can stand. Oh, shut the fuck up, Ruko snapped at her, hoisting her up onto her feet and looping her arm around her shoulder. Eric and Musashi did the same for Kwanmisley. Since both of them were taller than her, her feet dangled an inch or two off the ground. She groaned lightly at the movement. Eric whipped his head to look at her when he heard that sound. She is still alive, he announced. The blonde was glad to hear that, despite his misgivings about the hunter. We keep moving, he declared. That was all he said. Follow me then, Kasumi declared, already going down the corridor. They followed her, moving at a quick pace but not running in fear of making the wounded worse. When they entered the first room out of the corridor, some kind of cafeteria, they saw the place was engulfed in seeker swarms. Oh fuck, Zaid swore at the sight of them. Walk carefully, be silent, cautioned Morden, looking at the swarm crowding around the walls and the ceilings. The floor was walkable, but there were still seekers there. Vaccine should protect us. I don't like the sound of that sentence. After we get through that door, Kasumi said, pointing at the door on the other side of the room, it's a straight shot to the pickup spot. So shut up and move. They made their way through the cafeteria. The path was narrow enough to make them walk in a line, the wounded being held in the middle to offer more protection. No one dared to say a word in fear of alerting the swarm. Even though they tried to keep their attention on the exit, some of them couldn't help but look up at the seekers buzzing and moving around everywhere. The smell in particular got to them, a mixture of bad milk turning itself into cheese and honey fermenting in a very bad way. It was like stepping into a hive that could go off at any moment. They just held on to the hope that the vaccine would hold out long enough to get them out of there. It was a long walk filled tense silence, but they had been able to reach the door. When it opened, the sound made them all stop in reflex, waiting for the seeker swarm to react. When it didn't, they relaxed a little bit. But then Kwanmisley let out a small groan of pain, quiet enough to only be heard by them. But it seemed that the swarm had excellent hearing. The sounds and movement in the room stopped for a moment. Then it tripled and the buzzing sound turned really angry, very quick. The room virtually exploded with seekers as Naruto shouted once more, run. They sprinted for the door and barely made through before the seeker swarm struck, it closing shut before they could get through. What the fuck happened? Zaid demanded, looking accusingly at Morden. I thought that the vaccine was supposed to keep us protected from those things. Vaccine still not completed. Obviously still needs work, the Solarian replied. The merc didn't look too happy at that. Jacob stopped them before they could start, stepping between the two of them. There were slight burn marks on his armor, either from the running fight outside or when the grenade went enough, but he was still standing. Let's get out of here first, then worry about where the blame should go, alright? He said to them both. Morden looked perfectly fine with it, and while Zaid looked like he wanted to continue the argument, he nodded reluctantly. Like Kasumi had said, after that it was a straight shot to the pickup spot. Once they were through the door, they saw they were outside of the base itself. The shuttle had already touched down, and the door was opened. They wasted no time getting aboard, the wounded going first. Naruto ensured that everyone else got on first, counting heads as they went. When the last one got on, he breathed in relief and faced the shuttle. We're out of here. That's when he heard the sound of a gun readying a bullet behind him. You spoke too soon again, Kurama said to him. Thank you, I figured that out, he replied. He turned around and wasn't surprised to see Ashley standing there with her rifle pointing at his chest. We really need to stop meeting like this, Ash. You're coming with me, Commander, Ashley declared, keeping her gun level and pointed. Even though she was trying to remain calm and collected, he heard the tone of her voice. It was tinged with hope and desperation. She was hoping that he would do as she said. Do you really think that's going to happen? He asked. I know it is. You're going to have to live with the disappointment of being wrong then. He started to turn his back on her. Take another step and I will shoot to incapacitate you, she shouted threateningly. He paused, not in fear of the threat, but for what came next. You've been missing for 2 years, Commander. And when you do show up again, you're with the Akatsuki of all people? Because they blackmailed you into fighting their little war? She demanded. You've turned your back on everything that we've done by joining them. I didn't have a choice in the matter, he told her. That doesn't excuse the fact of what they've done. You have to come in. I still have a job to do. Hell, I just found out that I've got 2 jobs. And he was going to have a talk with the elusive man about that second job. Sorry, Ash, but I can't go with you. You're not getting on that shuttle, Naruto. They didn't have time for this. Quan Misli could die if she didn't get to Chukwa's ASAP. So he was going to have to go with the trump card. If you reveal me, I'm going to have to reveal you, he declared. There was a pregnant pause in the air between them, with only the sound of the shuttle waiting to take off breaking it. What do you mean by that? She asked him. I'm not a complete idiot, Ash, and I still have my eyes. I know what I heard and saw. He finally turned around and looked right at her. Her eyes were red with the Sharingan. When did you get the Mangekyo Sharingan? Her body froze at those words and her eyes widened in fear. How? She tried to ask but was unable to. He knew what she was trying to say. Like I said, I'm not a complete idiot, and I've still got my eyes. What you have is probably why you're the only one facing me. I'm guessing you used Amaterasu to drive the Seeker swarms off. Of course, you could have only destroyed that collector's ship by using the Susanoo. He kept his gaze on her as he delivered each one of those facts. You were the one who told me that to have it was forbidden in this day and age, Ash. But the fact that you haven't sealed it away marks you as a hypocrite. He held up his hand and cut her off. Save it. If you bring me in, I'm going to be forced to reveal that you have it, Ash. I don't want to do that to you, so don't make me. He lowered his hand and turned his back on her. I'm getting on this shuttle and you're going to let me. If asked, say that you missed us by a few seconds or a minute, I don't care. As he started walk to the shuttle, he heard her say, I got them when I heard the Normandy had exploded with you still on it. Those words cut into him a little. She had gotten the one thing that her clan, his friend, had forbidden because of him. What could he say to that? You could say nothing, Kurama told him. I can't do that. Yeah, you can. It's quite to do. I'm not that big of asshole. Well, shut up, he told the fox before he could actually say anything. He decided to go with the truth of the matter. For what it's worth, it was good to see you again, Ash. He put his guns away and took the sword off his back. Here, he said as he laid it on the ground beside him. Keep this and put it to good use. Your ancestor would have wanted it to be used. He went to the shuttle and got on board. Since he didn't hear her shoot, she probably took his advice. He retracted his helmet and looked at everyone in the shuttle. No one heard a word, got it? The silent threat that came with that question was obvious to them all. If anyone blabbed, he would know and they would not like the outcome. Miranda might have taken the moment to make a comment that would be laced with sarcasm or snark, something she had picked up from him, even though she would deny it, but at that moment, she looked too pale to argue. She just leaned against Ruko, all but holding on to her for support. It was Gurus who replied by asking her what. Good. He made his way to the cockpit door and thumped it once. Let's get out of here. I've had enough of this base. Dusk was settling in over Konoha. Naruto couldn't see a lot of the village from where he stood, but what he could see showed him that the place hadn't really changed. Of course, that wasn't his main focus. He was more focused on Sakura standing in front of him as she looked at a house. She looked better than she had been on the mountain, but now she was staring at the door to the house, and he could see how tense and nervous she was. Are you going to do anything about it? Gyuki asked him. Yeah, he replied, ready to reach out and give her a push. But it turned out that he didn't need to do anything. She reached out and knocked on the door, the sound seemingly echoing in his ears. It didn't take long for the door to open. A Midgardian almost rivaling Eric in height but lacking his beard stood in the doorway, a polite smile already on his lips. Yes, who is? His question fell short as he saw who it was standing there. His smile disappeared too. Hello, Sven, Sakura said to him. She did not speak warmly or coldly, just neutrally. As they both stood there, Naruto walked around to the side so he could see both of their faces. He didn't reply to her. Instead, he looked back into the house. Dear, you'd better come here. A woman appeared by his side. Naruto recognized that it was Sarada, older than the last time he had seen her. Her eyes had widened in surprise for a brief moment, and then hardened. Mother, she said to Sakura. Sarada, she replied, letting a little warmth into her voice. Her daughter didn't take too kindly to the warmth, even though she didn't show visibly. It showed in how her free hand tightened a little before relaxing. When did you get back? Today, just a few hours ago, she answered. Why are you here? She looked at both of them with careful eyes, taking a moment to collect herself. Whatever it was she was about to ask, it was hard for her. May I come in? Excuse me? It is Sunday evening. The Uchihas always have a family dinner today. And it's at your home this time around. And now you want to come in? Her daughter asked. You who up and vanished for 7 years? You want to come back into our lives and pretend like nothing had changed? She was getting angry. She was also trying to keep her voice level, but it was clear to Naruto that it was quickly becoming a losing battle. Sakura looked at her with sad eyes and shook her head. No, I don't want that. Sarada stopped and looked at her with a new and suspicious look. What? It's been 7 years. I know things are different. Things have changed. I've changed. She looked at them both as she continued to talk. I know I've not been the best of people to you both after the wedding. I know I wasn't the best person even before that, holding that grudge against Midgardians. You've let it go? Sven asked, sounding and looking a little surprised. She looked at him, and for a brief second Naruto saw the anger and hate burning in them. But she closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, the look was gone. I'm trying to, but it's not been easy, she admitted. I can't claim to love you as a son-in-law, Sven. But I am going to try and be civil. Perhaps the love will come in time. He regarded her with a long look. Naruto didn't know what was going through his head, but he hoped that it was something good. Finally, the Midgardian looked at his wife and then at his mother-in-law. The food is being put on the table, he told her. Please wash up beforehand. She smiled in gratitude. Thank you. They walked inside and she followed them in. So did Naruto. After taking off their shoes and her cloak, they pointed her to a washroom off the side to the entrance, where she disappeared for a few seconds. Then she stepped back out and followed them further into the house. The sound of a happy family came from further on, and it soon revealed itself as the three of them walked across the living room into the dining room. Inside was a large table and each seat was occupied. When he saw the family sitting around it, Naruto's first thought was, geez, Sakura and Sasuke had been busy. That's what you have to say to all this? Saiken asked. What can I say? Look at that family. The youngest of the adults looks like he's only a chunin. Despite what he might have thought about the size of the family, everyone there fell silent as they looked to see who it was. The children looked confused at why the adults were silent, and the adults were just looking at Sakura in complete and utter shock. Sasuke himself stood up from the table, his hair completely gray and cut into a shape that showed his lined and weathered face. Sakura? He asked. She smiled a little. Sorry I'm late. Her eyes fell on the table and the people sitting around it, precisely at the children sitting there. Sarada saw her mother's gaze and her own expression softened a little. Mikoto, come here, she called out to a little girl, probably just about 4 years old, sitting next to a toddler in a high seat. I want you to meet someone. Sakura gave her daughter a surprised look as the little girl climbed down from her seat and walked over to her mother, her arms reaching out so she could be held. Sarada instantly picked her up and held her against her chest. Who is she, mommy? The girl asked. Her black hair showed that she was an Uchiha, but her brown eyes clearly came from her father. This is Sakura, your grandmother. She looked at Sakura more and tilted her head slightly, like she was a dog looking at something shiny. Granny? She said, asking. Naruto stifled a snort of laughter. Never once did he think of Sakura as a granny. She was too much like Tsunade, and he figured that she would punch anyone who'd call her that. But Sakura just smiled and said, Yes, I'm your granny. It's nice to meet you, she told the little girl. The little girl smiled brightly at her. Hi, Granny, she chirped, holding her arms to her. Grandmother and mother looked at each other silently, and Sarada leaned her weight forward, offering her daughter. Sakura took her granddaughter into her arms and held there. She shared a smile with Sarada, a smile that they only seemed to understand. They all walked to the table and sat down, with Sakura sitting next to Sasuke. Naruto watched them all as they eat and got used to her being there once more. He was glad for her. She deserved this kind of ending, he thought to himself. You make it sound like she's going to fall over dead the next day, Kurama commented. Codex entry, Humanity and the Systems Alliance Chunin exams. The Chunin exams could be one of the most controversial things in the galaxy, if it wasn't so thoroughly steeped in history and tradition, while also having the complete backing of the Alliance. While battlefield promotions are still a viable option, the exams are the preferred method for genin to be promoted to Chunin. Oddly enough, even if one does make to the end of the exams, there is no guarantee that person will be promoted. Another defining trait of the exams is the fact there is a very real possibility that the genin can die at any time. In the pre-flight era of Earth, the Chunin exams originated in the elemental countries. A team of 3 genin would participate, and while they would have entered together, it is separate achievement that earns the rank. The exams are traditionally 3 and are designed to test not only the strength and intelligence of a singular genin but also how his team. The exams are also changed each time so there can be no forward study, although there has been admittance of recycling old exam methods, the earliest being about 50 years after it was introduced. When first introduced, it was allowed for any genin of whatever age to sign up and participate in the exams, although there have been no records of genin freshly graduated from the academy doing so. After the War of 3 Flags, the standards for which participation to the exams were heavily revised. Genin had to serve a set number of years before being allowed to participate. After the Shinobi Uprising, the child soldier program of the Shinobi was completely abolished and further revisions were made. Academy students could only graduate to genin at 15 years of age and could only participate in the Chunin exams after 5 years of service. Despite all the changes made to them, the one thing that the Shinobi have defended without question was the fact that genin could very well die during the exams. They have said that they need to know the kind of danger that comes with earning the rank. When some have accused the Shinobi into turning the Chunin exams into a blood sport, as the third exam is usually 1 versus 1 combat, the standard reply has become, rather infamously, they've signed the liability waivers. In spite of the fact that death is a possibility, the Chunin exams have turned into a televised event that draws millions of spectators in to watch whenever they occur. It is particularly popular amongst the Krogan,